post the colors. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, salute. 2. Color guard, regroup. Color guard, dismiss. Audience at ease. Thank you.
So should I call it order first?
No. All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council, January 28th, 2019. Could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Dearness,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Waite,
Here.
Mayor Toussaint.
Here. That we have the Pledge of Allegiance, a little out of order, but thank you very much for your demonstration led by the Boy Scout Troop 41. And I think we have a speakership slip from Dave Watkins. Did you want to come up and?
I'm here tonight to address the City Council regarding the tree burn in January.
Is your mic on?
Thank you. I'm here to address the City Council regarding the Christmas tree burn in January. It's one of our events that we do with the community is to have a demonstration of how to properly retire a U.S. flag. And we do that every year at the tree burn. It's a great opportunity for the boys to get time with the public and for the public to see what a proper flag retirement ceremony includes. We also, during the year, collect several hundred flags. As they become worn, faded, and beyond repair, the community looks to us to retire the flags properly. Because of the quantity, last year, or well, this year, my pickup truck was full all the way to the top. We get flags anywhere from this size to 12 feet by 6 feet. It just depends on what the business is and where they've been flown. We store them during the year, and then we give them a proper retirement, including a flag retirement ceremony in front of the community at the tree burn. And a lot of people don't realize that's what we're doing as far as the number of flags we're retiring at that time. So it's a great opportunity for the Scouts and for the community to see and understand the respect that is required when you retire a flag. So it's one of those events that we would like to see continue for that purpose. I think it's great exposure for the boys, and I think it's great exposure for the community to understand what is a proper flag retirement ceremony. So that's all I have to say.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We appreciate your service. With that, we'll move on to a presentation by the Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau. Year-end report.
Could we have the lights? Could we have the lights a little lower? Thank you. Oh, yeah, not that low. Yeah, I will need that. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and City staff and members of the audience. I'm Tracy Farhad, Executive Director of the Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau, and I'm here for your 2018 Annual Marketing report. So with me are our board member president, Mr. Kim Jensen, and Dr. Kenneth Harwood, as well as members of my staff. I have Brenda Ball, our digital media director, right in front of you here, Daniel Lar, our sales and special programs manager, and also Greg Corso, our sales contractor. You will also be seeing their work tonight in our presentation, as well as in the printed annual report that is now in your hands, which goes into great depth for you. So thank you for allowing us this opportunity to share with you results of our programs throughout the year, and because it truly takes a village. So while our mission is to influence travel to Solvang, it is essential we maintain our market share of competitive destinations and grow new audiences every year. So let's watch a short video on our newest crowd-pleasing event, the inaugural Solvang Stomp.
My favorite part of the Solvang Stomp was none other than the stomp.
My favorite thing was, of course, the wine, right?
It's been awesome. We've had 30 wineries, 2 bands, a rosé lounge.
We're out of town. We don't know people, and we were having pizza with people and talking with people, and that's what the world needs more, love and a connection, and we got it here.
We also have a 2-minute version of that, and now lives on our website, getting people prepared. So save the date for October 19th of this year for the 2nd annual Stomp. Well, we promote Solvang through multiple avenues, reaching people worldwide. This heat map indicates where our ticket holders hail from, including South Korea and Japan, all the way to the west, Alaska to the north, and even Colombia to the south. We hit markets in Northern California and Las Vegas. This is our secondary market. And significant exposure in the south down to Orange County, San Diego, and we even had a ticket purchaser from Tijuana this year. So now here's a short promo video for our just completed Yule Fest season. I swear we made that before we knew you were talking about the Christmas tree burn tonight. Anyway, I want to give a thanks to Daniel Lair because he had his handiwork on that wonderful video for us. Well, next let's talk about measuring our leisure market through the #1 website for tourists in the Valley, solvangusa.com. So unique website visits went up 21% this year. It's a new record high for us. Our online booking engine saw over 4,000 click-throughs, capturing 410 room nights for an impressive 10% conversion rate. Now, solvangusa.com obviously brings revenue to the city and to businesses of Solvang. That was a great job, Brenda, on keeping us current and on the cutting edge of, as destination websites remain one of the top 3 planning tools for inspiring travelers. Now, direct marketing tools also support the multiple touch points needed to convert an inspired traveler to an actual visitor. And we send out monthly newsletters to keep us top of mind. Our social media channels grew followers by 35% in 2018, and these too are essential for telling our stories and replying to those being told about us. So when in Solvang, travelers accessed the Experience Solvang mobile app, and after 1 year in operation, they walked and listened to our cultural heritage come alive, one block at a time, through our audio tour. In fact, I met a young couple from Monterey last Thursday standing on the corner, and I had to stop them and say, please tell me you're listening to our audio tour, and they were. Made me very happy. So we also answered the needs of frontline concierge staff and those arriving without the benefit of our visitor center know-how, and we created a shareable community connection toolkit. We distributed that to all our businesses, plus we added new rack card holders strategically placed in our parking lots with top 10 to-dos and maps. And they've been refilled twice weekly, and after a year, I'm happy to say, they're all intact and in good shape, so it's working. Sales is foremost in our minds and actions year-round. We represent Solvang at these domestic trade shows and overseas in Scandinavia every other year. New this year, we reached out to the association meeting planners, including the faith travel leaders. We've hosted tour operators and meeting planners from 7 countries, all looking to add Solvang to their customers' itineraries. Greg has done a great job of showing off our town, and Daniel keeps them busy with group classes and activities that we develop. Our Chinese guests were especially appreciative of all the materials that we translated for the Happy New Year and even the posters in the windows, so thank you, everybody. Well, we meticulously record all leads, total number of confirmed events that we touch, number of attendees, and room nights booked at our local hotels through our efforts. As you can see, we focus on the midweek conferences, and 84% of the dates we booked are Sunday through Thursday. With an average daily spend by hotel guests of $192, an estimated $607,000 was spent or going to be spent within the city of Solvang in this year alone by proactively pursuing group business through this department. So bravo, Greg and Daniel, for all your efforts, doing a super job. And also to our hotel partners, because it definitely takes a team. Now, for a look at our film initiatives. 18 brought Little Women LA back in June to Solvang, and Daniel worked extensively with the production crew both before and during the shoot. This chart shows the spike in online visitation. You see the blue line above the orange. The orange was the previous year. And the blue spikes on both of those 2 points are literally 1 week apart, both episodes of Little Women LA on a Wednesday during the airing of the show. This is spikes to our website, people searching and wanting to get information while they're watching key media. The exciting thing was that we even have Visitor's Guide requested the very next day, quoting how cute our town looked on that show. So this is one of the reasons why we're working so hard with the media and the film crew. These are some of the examples of the productions that we've helped in obtaining permits, scouting locations, and securing interviews. I wanted to give a bravo shout out to Diane at Planning Department because she worked with Netflix last year. We had them here during the month of January when it was super quiet because of the crisis. And Paddleton is starring Ray Romano. That airs on February 22nd. But up first is the PBS special series, Travels with Darlie, with a 44 million reach, and it airs on KCET in LA on Wednesday.
American road trip along California's Central Coast, including historic Hearst Castle. We're driving iconic Highway 1 to explore some of the best of California's Central Coast, including beach towns, mountains, wildlife, wine, and historic sites.
That's pretty much Solvang on a fork.
Leaving these fresh oysters right here on this view. You guys have a tough work environment out here.
I know, it's not a bad office, right?
And when you get to the top of these hills, you know, as you're reaching towards the sky, you look over and there's the actual ocean.
Figueroa Mountain is part of the Los Padres National Forest, and it's very well known for its wildflowers.
We're discovering the Los Padres National Forest, Ventura, Solvang, Morro Bay, San Simeon, and beyond on Travels with Darlie, California's Central Coast.
We were excited about having this cooperative opportunity with the Central Coast Tourism Council, another great reach for Solvang, and again, look for that airing Wednesday down in Los Angeles. So film shoots don't come every day, but media inquiries do, and we answered the call and we assisted over 874 journalists, all in 2018. We also attended media receptions and we hosted influencers and we co-opted with our regional partners, capturing over 500 articles that mentioned Solvang here in the States and abroad. Well, 2018 brought accolades by top media outlets such as USA Today, Huffington Post, Expedia, Reader's Digest, and even my favorite, Architectural Digest. The CVB assisted each one of these, and of course, these great 10 best of comes from inside the town first before someone wants to name it that afterwards. But we definitely worked with each one of those outlets. We contract with DVA Advertising to strategically place high visible advertisements, both digital at 56% and print at 44% year-round. We target the 100,000 household income female travel decision maker, age 25 to 65, in Southern and Northern California, plus the Pacific Northwest. Our paid advertising garnered an estimated 49.3 million eyes in 2018. We drove traffic to our website for the best measurable results. We lagged in 2017, the first quarter, due to the crisis recovery mode. You can see how the blue is this current year, the orange was last year. So it took a little while to ramp up after the first couple months in recovery. However, July through December, as you can see, sessions rose 42% with holiday traffic at an all-time high. Now, social media campaigns and frequency kept the conversations lively, while display advertising kept them clicking. Thank you, Daniel, for letting us use your daughter's lovely smile there on the left. It's our most popular click. In summary, the Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau is putting your tourism investment to work. After implementing 3 crisis communication plans and redirecting advertising, Solvang rebounded strongly during the peak summer months. The mid-August reopening of Highway 1 along the coast brought back the day trip buses after a nearly 18-month absence. Now, hotel bookings doubled year over year through our website alone, and December was the best performer. Now, occupancy has risen and fallen, some due to the crisis, others from increased room supply in the Tri-County region. And in fact, more rooms are coming online in Paso Robles, SLO County, Pismo, Buellton, and Santa Barbara in 2019. So we'll need to be on our toes. However, that being said, we've got a little man on the street video for you.
Tourism.
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 I believe it's tourism.
Absolutely vital.
Extremely so, I would imagine.
It would be very important.
Critical. Without it, the town will die.
Tourism downside would be maybe traffic.
Congestion, traffic through, especially on Mission Drive.
Traffic.
Probably just traffic.
It's super fun to go out and talk to people who are around the world.
The income that they produce for not only the city, but the city and its valley.
Obviously for the economy, I mean, because you want to live in a place that's nice and, you know, I can't support it all personally. The citizens can't support it. So the tourism brings money and prosperity to the valley.
The tourism supports the motels and the restaurants and the shops where the parents of these kids work. So without that, a bunch of us here wouldn't have jobs either.
80%.
Closer to 60 to 65%.
60%.
Third of it?
The city, I mean, we know what would happen. It would be empty.
I lived here and grew up when Solvang wasn't really necessarily a tourist location. So my father was one of the individuals that helped promote it and helped do the design and construction and move it towards a Northern European look versus just a little country town in the middle of nowhere.
I can't imagine it without tourism, because although tourism has grown, it's always been a part of Solvang. I came here the first time as a tourist.
If the tourism were to sharply drop off to nothing, it would be a disaster. I can't really tell you what's going to happen, but people are just going to have to start moving away, and eventually this is going to become not a ghost town, but close to it.
How cute it is. It's really nice. It's a nice place, and I think it's a safe place.
One weekend is Danish Days, which is sort of the highlight for me, where you get to come and experience Solvang and Dane for a day and those kind of things.
The restaurants.
The restaurants that they have here compete with Santa Barbara directly, and we have many people from Santa Barbara that say our restaurants actually quality-wise are better quality than Santa Barbara's flashy restaurants down there.
I want to thank our man on the street, Mr. Daniel Lair. And those were not your typical tourism industry directly related folks. That was a teacher, a realtor, a nurse, and an insurance agent. The chart earlier was showing the transient occupancy tax, known as the bed tax. It's been at a fairly steady growth for 5-6 years, which means the hoteliers have been able to keep their average daily room rate fairly high. And I look forward to this coming fiscal year and finding out if, as December any indication, Solvang tourism is on the mend and still showing strength of market share. So I want to thank you all for your time tonight. I want to thank you for your leadership. We invite each of you to meet with our team and hear firsthand about our marketing programs. We are at your service.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Hey, a couple quick questions. On slide 25, I was just curious if you could explain the blue bar far down on 2018-19 and then the orange way up. Is that from the fires when we had?
No, actually, in the last way up here at the right is because 18-19 has not concluded yet, so that's at the current occupancy rate for the first 4 months of the year. But you'll see with the orange bar, that is the occupancy level, so even though occupancy might go up and come down, the blue bar is the TOT or the bed tax collection. So that's what's been fairly steady that you have collected into the city.
Perfect. And my one last little question was
forward to that last bar being filled in.
Yes. Do you know how many total room nights there are in Solvang, by chance?
There's 709 rooms times 365.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Currently.
Does any other member of the council have a question about the presentation?
Oh. Sorry, I'm looking at the CAF report that just came out, and I look at this kind of closely year over year. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing here doesn't comport with what I see up there.
Did you just get the last? Because we did not have November, so
no,
these are only the numbers through October.
For example, in 2017, it says 72%, and there it looks like almost 77%. And unfortunately, this is true going back several years. So it looks like the average occupancy rate might be around 73%.
So the occupancy is the orange bar. So in 17-18, it was down closer to just above 70%.
Okay, it's a confusion of the blue bar with the orange. So the blue bar is just the total
tax collections.
Tax collection.
That's the problem. I think if you could reverse that, it would make more sense.
I like the strength of the blue bars better than the occupancy. What I wanted to show you is that occupancy isn't everything, and the reason I mentioned that is occupancy depends upon a lot of things. It's your supply and demand. There have been over 3,000 new rooms added to the Tri-County area in the last 2 years alone. Even Buellton in the last couple of years had to, quote, as what we say, absorb new rooms when the Hampton Inn came online. And our occupancy has also changed depending upon whether we are providing government rate for first responders, for example, whether we lost any TOT from that. You might have a higher occupancy, but not necessarily paying TOT. So it's always good to be able to look at the bed tax collections, and because that shows the strength of an average daily room rate, which means the hoteliers are able to keep up with the demand.
Perfect.
So the excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold.
Sorry.
The average daily room rate would be reflected where on there?
That's not on this chart.
Could you do that next time?
Sure.
That would be useful too. I think those 3 items would be really powerful on one slide. And we already have it here on the CAFR, so I'd like to see that there too.
Yeah, be happy to.
Perfect. Are there any more questions of the presentation? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 1, public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct any comments to the City Council regarding the consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Council. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. I have one speaker slip here from Caroline Abate.
Thank you. Members of the Solvang City Council and each person listening, thank you for allowing me to speak with you. On January 26, 2019, tens of thousands of people marched down Market Street in San Francisco in opposition to abortion. On State Street in downtown Santa Barbara, flags were flying in honor of Planned Parenthood, America's largest abortion provider. As long as abortion is legal in our country, it is only fair that everyone know precisely what happens to the unborn child during the abortion procedure, so that they can be fully aware of exactly what it is that they are supporting. Accept that the graphic reality of all the pain and suffering that the unborn child has to endure in order to go from being alive to being dead is so brutal, cruel, and inhumane that to describe it in any detail would go outside the bounds of respectable speech. About all you can do is to politely ask those who support abortion to imagine for themselves what has to happen to that unborn baby as it is being killed. Which begs the question, why does our country continue to support an act so truly violent and barbaric that it cannot even be discussed or described? That's not logical. Abortion is a tragedy for our country. However, that tragedy can be undone. Fortunately, we live in a democracy, and hopefully we will have a choice about the person for whom we vote to represent us in the California State Legislature in 2020. Currently, Ms. Monique Limon is the representative in the California State Assembly for the 37th District, which includes the city of Solvang. She supports abortion and voted yes on California Senate Bill 320. I would urge everyone listening to please think very carefully about the candidates for whom you choose to vote and their political agenda. Please vote for candidates who will protect the dignity of human life, beginning at our earliest unborn moments, continuously until natural death. Thank you for allowing me to share this perspective with you, and may everyone listening have a good evening.
Thank you. Esther Bates.
Mayor Toussaint, City Council members, welcome. My first time to address you as a council here. I'm here on behalf of Elverhoy Museum of History and Art, Esther Jacobson Bates. I'm the executive director. Wanted to just give you a quick update. It's been a busy time at Elverhoy. In December, we welcomed nearly 4,000 visitors, sharing the history of our community, the Danish holiday traditions, and a lot about Nissa, the question of the day, because of the little Nissa hunt that was so popular this holiday season. This past Saturday, we invited families to the museum for adventures and storytelling. We had 4 local authors. They read aloud children's books, and kids ages 2 to 10 enjoyed craft stations and makers activities with Danish building blocks. We had a scavenger hunt and lots of kids touring the museum grounds. We had more than 70 people in attendance, and we received support from our regular volunteer team, as well as more than a dozen high school students and National Charity League moms and daughters. Our amazing volunteer team at the museum is more than 75 active adults, as well as volunteers that assist with all areas of the museum operations, and that energetic and growing group of high school students. Our current art gallery exhibition, Nordic Light, has been garnering lots of public and critical praise for our Danish artist Hannah Stovring. In associated programming, we presented a Nordic Light duet on January 12th. It was really kind of a magical event. We had poetry and song presented in both Danish and English, and it was, like I said, a special day. So continuing that theme of promoting Solvang's Danish culture, I had the pleasure of meeting with the president of the Danish National Committee of Southern California, and a mouthful, and an organization that with 14 clubs under their banner and quite a large outreach. This meeting was put together by Tracy Beard from the Solvang Chamber and with the goal of promoting midweek stays and cultural experiences. I also supported the CVB with a tour and welcome for a group of Chinese tour operators. The next week is the fun. The newest cadre of Danish students from the Niels Brock Copenhagen College are arriving here in the San Ynez Valley to begin their semester at the San Ynez Valley High School. And we'll greet them and have a little orientation and a slide talk about our Solvang's history and then our commitment to education that really goes back to the founders and their vision for our town. Lastly, I would like to really encourage you, the council, to revitalize kind of a now dormant relationship with the sister city, Aalborg, Denmark. In past years, this has been a really vibrant relationship that's kind of garnered a lot of exchange, and I think there's opportunities that are awaiting here that we can do. And then I just wanted to lastly close with saying Elverhøy has at its core a commitment to support art and culture and preserve Solvang's special history. And I think Elverhøy truly has become that link between the past and the future in maintaining our city's historic roots and cultural authenticity. So thank you. And just in case you need to keep busy, that little Danish building block I told you about, I have a little sample pack for each of you to play with.
Thank you. So that was our only 2 speaker slips for public comments. Does anyone else wish to speak during public comment? With that, we'll move on to council comments and requests, item number 2. Comments, requests from city council members, no action will be taken at this meeting. Chris, would you like to start?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure to see the Boy Scouts here. I was a Boy Scout myself, and I really appreciated the things that I learned there. It served me well, even to this day. So I encourage you to continue to do this and come as often as you can to these council meetings. There's a lot to learn. I know it looks kind of boring to see a bunch of old people here sitting and talking, but you'll learn a lot the more you come. Unfortunately, I was ill this week, so forgive me if I sound kind of raspy, but I had the chance to go to the Chamber of Commerce meeting on Wednesday where they talked about the state of the city, and I was impressed with the fact that they put this event on year after year, and it's a growing event in terms of popularity, success, financially for them. I was wondering if we could do something like this for the residents. I don't know if we do this by video so that everybody could see what was presented at the State of the City, but I think the residents would be well served. What?
Are you talking about the economic forum?
No, I'm talking about the State of the City. Is there a way to do that?
Council member, the State of the City is this Wednesday.
No, I know that. What I'm suggesting is there a way to videotape that so that the residents can also see that? Because many of them can't go in the middle of the day on Wednesday, for example.
We can coordinate possibly a videotaping of that with the chamber if possible.
Perfect.
The audio may not be the same and the presentation may not be the same, but we could try to put something together on the PowerPoint.
I would appreciate that. I think the residents would too. The next day I went and participated in a chamber group meeting where they were trying to put together a survey by which they could encourage the right type of tenant mix here in Solvang. It's a noble idea. I think we all need to get behind this in the sense that tourism is a big factor in our city in terms of economic driver. And what we want to do is create a context that will attract the right kind of retailer here to generate as much revenue and more importantly, an experience for the tourists so that they want to keep coming back. So I would encourage everybody here and on the council to reach out to anybody you know to participate in that survey and try to get as much information out of this as possible. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, Karen?
Thank you, Chris. I thought you were going to speak about I thought you were speaking about the economic forum, not the state of the city, so my apologies there.
That's what I thought too, though.
Okay. Well, I've been busy with a lot of things over the last week, probably about 6 or 7 meetings. But the first thing I want to touch on is I sat in our last council meeting and listened to some comments from a member of the public, Carolyn Abate. Am I pronouncing that? Are you a Solvang resident? No. Okay. All right. Well, this is what we might call a non-partisan council. So this is not a political forum, nor is it a religious or ethical forum. So I wanted to put that out there because I sat and listened to your comments, your negative, actual slander of comments of political candidates at the last meeting, and it didn't sit well with me. Thank you.
Okay. Robert?
Working on several things as far as some builder's amnesty and the planning commission, et cetera. Esther, I would like to say, I'm on. I loved hearing your speech. I love what you do, and I still would like to get together with you and work on getting somehow getting new employees and new hires and whatnot into some kind of at least a half-an-hour tour, if we could do that in the future, because we're all ambassadors for Solvang. And I know, as my son is a busboy, he likes to talk about the history of Solvang with visitors, and I think it's so important when people come to this town and visit with the restaurants and whatnot, that the kids that work there know a little bit about this place. So I would like to get together with you at some point and do that. That's all I have for right now.
Daniel?
Just real quick, I was able to go to a conference in Sacramento for the League of Cities, and it was very informative. Very interesting to see how the politics works as far as the cities and the city councils and city managers. And I just wanted to report that it was a great conference, very worthwhile going and learning so much about how to run a city.
Perfect. And for me, Esther, I'll see you, I think, on February 8th at 3:30 for the, we're going to do a sister city meeting at 3:30 or at 4:30, I think was, I set up with Jim Richardson, so just let you know that that's what's going on. Okay, I know nothing. But no other comments tonight. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, correspondence received by the City Council. Do any council members have any comments on the correspondence received before we move on to the consent agenda? I have one item here from Cars Are Basic, which would be more appropriate for item number 6. And I have another letter here from a Dorothy Love, also regarding bicycle paths outside Nielsen Center. Do we have any other correspondence received?
No, that was for
that's yours?
this
Okay.
committee stuff.
All right. Does anyone have anything they'd like to comment on with regard to that?
I do. On the Alamo Pintado bicycle lanes, where we have cars that are actually parking in the bicycle lane, although the curb may or may not be marked red in that area, it does have a bicycle figure in that. So the rule on that is you wouldn't park in the bicycle lane because it's not a shared lane. So I think that would fall over into the Matt Vanderlinden area to take a look at that.
Okay. Are you requesting that we put that on the agenda at some point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have nods for that? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on correspondence received by the council? All right. With that, we'll move on to the item number 4, consent agenda. Let's see here. We got A through E. Do any council members have any items they'd like to pull? And if not, can we entertain on a motion to approve the consent agenda as is?
Hang on.
I'd like to pull item E.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Can I get a motion to approve items A through D?
Make a motion to approve items A through D on the consent agenda.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Dearness?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes. With that, we'll move on to item number E of the consent agenda, Integrated Regional Water Management Plan Update. Chris, would you like to start?
Yeah, I had just a couple of questions related to the law behind this. Sorry, I'm trying to find my notes here. Here we go. Senate Bill 1000 apparently creates an economic impact on our city, and I'd like to know from staff what that economic impact would be to ratepayers. I don't expect you to have an answer in the near future because it looks like it's a rather complicated one to answer, but can we direct staff to look into that?
Just so for clarification purposes, are you talking about the legal impact of SB 1000?
No,
or are
the
you talking about
economic impact.
the economic impact of how much staff time or the impact on the community as a whole?
On the ratepayers. My understanding of that is that, and I'm not completely knowledgeable about this issue, but it seems to me that there's a means by, it's I guess a means testing by which those people who can't afford to pay their water bill have a way to, I guess, push that onto the city. And the city would have to figure out how to compensate, how to adjust for that person or that group of people that aren't able to make their bill. Maybe I've misunderstood that, but as a consequence, I think there might be a significant impact on our community. And I'd like to know what that might be.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify the information that you're looking for. The item on the agenda is the adoption of the water management plan itself, and your concern is with the impact to low-income ratepayers under that plan?
The impact on the city due to low-income ratepayers who can't afford it, and they're going to have to push that off onto the city. Basically, it's a subsidy to them.
Okay. Well, at least under Proposition 218, subsidies would not be allowed. You have to, I mean, you can out of general fund, but typically from an enterprise fund standpoint, the enterprise is supposed to be self-sufficient. The city has in the past, I believe, subsidized water rates, but typically a water enterprise fund is supposed to be self-sufficient, and there are some limitations with respect to Prop 218 about favoring one set of ratepayers over another. So we can certainly look into that and get you more information about that.
I think Matt wants to speak on this.
Sure. Mayor Toussaint, council members, Matt Vander Linden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer. So I thought I would just add briefly. So the Senate bill you're referring to really is unrelated to the Santa Barbara County Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. But my understanding of that Senate bill is that the state will provide some type of funding source for the subsidy. And so at this point, I don't know the details of it, and we can research that and get back with the city council on that. But yeah, at this point, we don't believe it's going to have a direct impact on the Solvang water ratepayers.
So to clarify, you don't think it's going to be significant?
Correct.
And you think it'll be offset by potential grants from the state?
Yeah, or something like that, yes.
Okay.
But we can research that further and provide a brief summary for the city council.
I'd appreciate that.
With that, do we have a motion approving?
Well, I
I'm
have
sorry,
one more
Jim.
question.
Okay.
I just have a question for Matt, because we're working on the EMA together. Is this going to involve the EMA in any way?
Possibly. So the main reason, so the state of California is trying to encourage water, wastewater, and stormwater agencies to work together cooperatively and to try to have a process where the most beneficial projects are supported by the region and then are brought forward in applications for state grant funding. So there may be a future project that the Eastern Management Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency may want to implement, such as construction of monitoring wells or some type of stormwater infiltration project. But that's yet to be seen, so we'll have to go through the whole process of completing the groundwater sustainability plan. That will identify what kind of impacts are happening to the groundwater basin and what type of projects we may want to implement in the future. And then at that point, with the next update of the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, this document that's discussed in the staff report, with the next update of that, they may have some projects proposed in the plan. So basically, if you want, for most state grant funding programs for water, wastewater, and stormwater, you have to have your projects, each agency, each city, water district, the county, any projects like that that they want to pursue state grant funding for in the future, those projects have to be included in this plan. So the plan covers a whole wide variety of water resource related topics, and then in the appendix it has this list of projects from all the different agencies. So for example, for Solvang, we have our wastewater treatment plant upgrade project on that list, so we'll be eligible for state grant funding. So, so agencies are participating in this whole process because we do want to cooperate with each other and address regional water and wastewater and stormwater issues. But there's the additional incentive for everyone to cooperate and work together in this, so you'll be eligible for state grant funding. So that's kind of the main reason why some of the smaller agencies participate, is just so they can keep their foot in the door with the state and be eligible for possible future grant funding. It's still a competitive process to get those grant funds, but at least you're eligible to apply. If you're not, if your project is not in here, for most state grant programs, you can't even apply if your project's not in here.
Board question?
Yeah.
Does this include reclaimed water projects?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Let's make sure we get in on that.
Well, our project that's listed in there, it does mention the possibility of upgrade for, at this point it's been written sort of slightly vague and generic, so that gives us flexibility depending on what the city council decides to do in the future at the wastewater treatment plant. But it does mention the possibility of future recycled water in the project description that's in here.
Does anyone else have any questions? Daniel?
So basically, we're paying $50,000, and then we're going to basically see if we get this. It's a possibility that we could get 0 grants, correct?
That's a good question, and let me clarify. So where we are in the process right now, well, just let me take a step back. So I think the first integrated regional water management plan that was done was completed in, I think, 2007. I think that's when it was. But anyway, so it's been updated a couple times since then. This is about every 3 or 4 years it gets updated. And the list of projects can be updated annually. So even though the whole report doesn't get updated for 3 or 4 years, we can amend that project list and add projects every year. But kind of lost my train of thought here. So okay, so if you have so when the state comes out with a new grant program or a second cycle of funding under an existing program, they have a call for projects, and the agencies that are participating in this regional plan, they basically essentially vote on which projects in the region are the best projects.
Right.
So projects that have multiple benefits and also benefit multiple agencies, like our wastewater treatment plant. If we do this upgrade project, it'll benefit the community of San Ynez because we treat their waste at our wastewater treatment plant, and it also will provide the opportunity for Los Olivos in the future if they want to send their wastewater here. So it has what they consider like regional or multiple agency benefits. So the best and strongest projects are voted on by the members of the committee, and those projects can then move forward to prepare a grant application and submit the grant application to the state. So sometimes there's 2 or 3 or 4 projects that get selected and are all, and there's a grant application prepared for each of those projects. But the cost to hire a consultant to prepare a competitive grant application, which is usually like a couple inches thick, it's crazy. That's what that $50,000 cost is. So right now, Solvang has not received any funding through the Integrated Regional Water Management Program in the past. So I've been really pushing for Solvang to get funding with the county committee for the last few years, and kind of reminding them Solvang has never got any money yet, and other agencies have, and there is a desire to have the funds equitably distributed throughout the county. And so our project is at this point one of the top projects. It'll be yet to be determined if it's qualifies, under this to then take the next step to do the grant application. But that'll be coming in a few months.
Are you talking about the wastewater treatment plant?
Correct, the wastewater treatment.
And if we were to throw in the reclaimed water aspect of it, would that bring it to the top?
It's hard to say. I mean, right now it's already included in the project description. So yeah, I mean, it might help, but
Can you
it's
find
hard to
out?
say. Excuse me?
Can you find out?
Well, it's just a matter of going through the process. It's not like I can get on the phone or send somebody an email or whatever. We got to go through the process, and the whole committee, which is made up of staff members of all the different agencies in the county, basically vote on what, we have meetings and discuss, and basically they vote on what projects they think are the best.
So how do you know that we're the top? That's what I guess I'm wondering. You're saying we're up there at the top right now. Is that just because we've gone like 0 for 5 so far, and so we're due, or?
Well, that's a good question. So in the meetings over the last year, there have been a lot of members of other agencies that have expressed support for our project. We have both the staff from the San Ynez Community Services District also supporting and pushing for the project, and we have the list so far of all the other projects, and so we can compare our project to the other projects based on past history, and we know our project is pretty strong. So yeah.
Okay.
So it's just our assessment at this point, but.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move that we go ahead and accept the resolution.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Dearness?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes, and that passes the 5-0. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 5, Yule Fest Christmas Tree Burn. And our staff report will be given by Fred Logman, the Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Mayor Toussaint and council members. Fred Logman with Solvang Parks and Recreation. I am here tonight to discuss the potential future of the Christmas tree burn. First of all, I'd like to thank the Boy Scouts for coming out. They've been a participant now for several years at the tree burn doing their flag retirement ceremony. The annual Christmas tree burn has been held at the San Ynez Mission now since 1989. It was begun originally by the Solvang Fire Department because they were having issues with trees burning in chimneys and thereby chimney fires. So they wanted a public tree burning in a safe place. In March of 2011, the City of Solvang and the County Fire Department agreed to co-sponsor the event. And that is when Parks and Rec was involved. It is a 2-hour event. We provide music and refreshments. The Boy Scouts provide the retirement ceremony, and then the fire department takes the lead, and first discussing the dangers of the tree burn with the community and thereby the proper maintenance of the Christmas trees. They then do a demonstration. They have about half a dozen dry Christmas trees standing around the tree burn. They light those individually so they can see how quickly each tree is ignited, and it takes all of a few seconds for it to be completely engulfed. And so then they're talking about not only the dangers, but the proper maintenance of the trees to keep them watered throughout the month of December while you have them in your house, so you don't have the same issue happen there. Then the pile is ignited for the audience. And if you've been there, certainly the large bonfire is going on for about an hour or so, because it generally starts about 6 o'clock. The event ends at 7, but the fire department itself stays on site until the tree pile has burned down and is then finally extinguished. This past event, city staff did not receive any negative phone calls regarding the event. It did receive 2 written complaints, however, 1 positive correspondence, and a favorable editorial that was also published in the San Ynez Valley News. And you should have copies of those as attachments in your packet. And with that, I would leave it to council if they have any questions for me.
Are there any questions of the council from Fred? Okay.
I love the burn. And do we know if other cities do this too? What the closest other town that does this compared to?
I do not know the nearest city.
Nor
that
do
does
I.
it.
And I've been here in Southern California my whole life. I was just curious.
It's generally promoted as one of the only up and down the Central Coast.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Okay, with that, we'll move on to public comment. I have 1 speaker slip from Tracy Farhad.
Thought there'd be more. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the conversations that we have with the visiting public. We monitor 11 different social media channels as well, and we always look at the chatter that comes in and goes out. We only had 1 written complaint that was last year, and actually the other ones, and that was via our info@ system on our website. Everything else, the discussion was really held on a social media platform base, and there were equally the amount of people who were commenting, should we, after last year's fires, and then the community coming out in that public forum on the social media channel saying it's tradition, it's part of what unifies us, it's something that helps extend the whole holiday season. So we had even contacted Parks and Rec to find out, yes, no, and we had continued it. And I wanted to just say that that it includes thousands of both locals and, I think it's about 2,000, Fred said, between locals and visitors. It certainly helps extend the holiday season and wrap it up as a community event. And we have had dozens of great PR regarding and around this event for as long as I've been here, including some great film footage, as you saw even earlier. So based upon that, it is something that we have promoted as something very uniquely Solvang. And on behalf of the Visitors Bureau, we have only received positive comments about the event.
Thank you, Tracy.
And I hope it continues.
Would anyone else like to, in the public like to comment on this item? Frank?
Mayor, council members, thanks for listening. My name's Hank Homburg. I live here in Solvang, and I can honestly say we had this year 13 people come from Santa Barbara to stay at our house that evening for dinner and walk down to the burn, and they had a great time. The age group was from 3 years old until, 65, 66. So it's all encompassing, and everybody said the same thing, how great it was, that it was a real family event and brings a community together. And they were all from Santa Barbara, and they trek up here every year for it. So I just like to say that I hope it stays, and I think Parks and Recs and the fire department do a great job, and the food vendors were great too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, we'll bring this item back to the council for discussion and direction. Daniel, would you like to start?
I don't see any problem with keeping it, actually, so.
Robert?
It's one of my favorite events. It brings people together. I get the biggest kick out of thinking that when people drive by and they don't know what's going on if they're here for the first time and they see a big fire in the middle of the, I just get the biggest kick out of it. And it's such a neat thing for everybody to come together and have a good time, and I've enjoyed it very, very much. So I love it.
Okay. Karen?
It's a Solvang tradition since, 1989. And listening to former council members that have been on the Air Pollution Control Board for the county, and now myself being a member, this item has never come up as being a hazardous event. In respect to that, it's a one-time-a-year event, and I do think that it's part of our Yule Fest, and I think it should remain.
Chris? No comments? Okay. As for me, I did a little research, and it appears to me that leaf blowers probably do more damage than the tree burn. So with that, do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we go ahead and continue the tree burn.
Okay.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Dearness?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes. That passes with a 5-0. With that, we'll move on for item number 6, options for Mission Drive bike lanes. Can we get a staff report by our Director of Public Works, Matt Vanderlinden? They're like, couldn't we have left 10 minutes ago?
We're back here.
Would you like to come a little closer now? All right, Matt, you're up.
All righty. Good evening again, Mayor Toussaint and council members. So at this point, I'd like to present the staff report and discuss options for the Mission Drive bike lanes. So most of the background is in the actual staff report, but there was a few questions that came up in the last few days. So I thought it'd be helpful to add a couple items of the history or background on the project. So one of the questions that came up was, has there been a recent traffic study on Mission Drive? And the answer is yes. We began doing the Mission Drive corridor traffic circulation study back in March 2013. And to put this in context, the city has $3 million of Measure A funds specifically designated for traffic circulation improvements. And so we need to identify how to utilize those funds, how best to utilize those funds. So staff felt that doing a study and researching different ideas and presenting that to the city council would be a really good way to start that off, that process. And so that study was completed and approved by the city council back in July of 2014. And with that, the city council came up with a list of top priority and then lower priority projects. So the study looked at a wide variety of possible things that could be done, mostly at the conceptual level, but they looked at the possibility of adding landscaped medians on Mission Drive, the possibility of eliminating parking and putting 2 lanes in both directions on Mission Drive, eliminating parking and adding bike lanes, and a variety of intersection improvements, crosswalk improvements, mid-block crosswalks. They came up with a whole list of possible projects and presented those ideas both in writing and graphically with exhibits and things in the study. And so the city council at that time selected the ideas that they liked the best and created this list of top priority projects. Then they directed staff to proceed with the preliminary engineering and cost estimating for those projects so that those projects could then be incorporated into the 10-year capital improvement program. And so the next step was that preliminary engineering and cost estimating. That was completed in September of 2016. And staff was directed at that time to proceed with this list of projects, negotiate use of Solvang School parking lot. That was completed, and this past summer, the Solvang School parking lot was utilized for the first time on the weekends for tourist parking. The farmers market crossing guard at the corner of Mission and First. So that was done kind of on a trial basis, and it was determined that it really did not work well. A lot of the pedestrians kind of ignored the crossing guard, and then also there was difficulty when the crossing guard was on one side of the street. he could control the pedestrians on that side, said, wait, you know, for my signal or whatever. But the pedestrians on the other side, you know, when it's busy, cars going by, they just, once there was a gap, they would shoot across the street and completely ignore the crossing guard. So, so we tried that out, I think, for 3 full weeks, and it did not, or I should say 3 farmers market events, and it just did not really work out how anyone thought it would. Then the next 2 projects, the Mission Drive crosswalk improvements and Mission Drive intersection improvements, those 2 projects were combined into a single project to solicit more competitive bids, and that work was completed. Well, we did the engineering work about 2 years ago, and all that, or a year and a half ago, and the construction of all that was completed this past summer. And then the last item was eliminate parking along Solvang Park. However, a resolution was presented to the City Council and to eliminate the parking, and it failed in a 2-2 vote back in September of 2015. And then if you kind of jump ahead in time, this past June 2018, while the City Council was discussing its goal of enhancing the or improving transportation in the city, they directed staff to add a goal of removing parallel parking along Mission Drive. And then staff was also directed to bring back a resolution for that no parking. And then in July of this year, or this past year, the City Council passed the resolution to eliminate parking on the south side of Mission Drive from Nycobing to Pine Street, and then to add bike lanes on both sides of Mission Drive. So as mentioned, that decision was in July, and that direction from the City Council came just shortly after the budget had been adopted. So there was no funding in the budget for that project. But to take the first step moving forward with the City Council's direction, we hired a consultant to help us with doing a preliminary cost estimate so that we would know exactly the costs we're talking about and be able to present that to the City Council for a budget adjustment request. In addition, we're going to need surveying and engineered plans to implement bike lanes on Mission Drive, and a Caltrans encroachment permit will be required. And as we completed the preliminary cost estimate, we found that the cost was quite a bit higher than I think anybody anticipated. Another hurdle that we'll be facing is that there are a few locations along Mission Drive where the width of Mission Drive is not adequate to fit a 5-foot wide standard bike lane, Caltrans standard width bike lane, if we maintain parking on the north side. So if you can imagine where the center line of the road is, if you try to fit a travel lane for vehicles and a bike lane between the parked cars on the north side of the street, you don't have enough room unless you shift the center line of the street over. And so that creates a cost problem as well. So just to summarize the parking and costs, we have 21 parking spaces on the south side of Mission Drive. These are parallel parking spaces, public parking spaces, and 36 on the north side, plus 16 private spaces that are the diagonal ones. And with option A, as our consultant started working on the cost estimate, they realized, as I mentioned, if you try to fit that bike lane between the travel lane and the parked cars, you have to shift the center line over. So if you just eliminate parking on the south side of the street, you have to shift the center line to the south to provide enough room between the center line for a travel lane, for a westbound travel lane and bike lane. So when you shift that center line, that impacts all the traffic loops at the traffic signals, and then the cost jumps up. So so eliminating the parking just on the south side has a cost of approximately $230,000. But if you eliminate parking on both the south and the north side, then the center line can stay. The traffic loops don't have to be reconstructed, and it's a lower cost. So that's why you see the cost difference. With that, I do have some exhibits. Thinking. So this is an exhibit that's included in the staff report. It just shows Mission Drive kind of through the middle there, and the is this on? And the number of parking spaces are shown here. The number here, 16 in red, that represents the diagonal private spaces, and the spaces shown in green are loading spaces. So we think we might be able to keep the 2 loading spaces here and fit the bike lane in between the right turn pocket, but that'll be determined when the final engineering is done. But so that shows the all the parking spaces, and then we have aerial photos if you would like to see, look at something more specifically. But I guess maybe that's good for now. But
Actually, do you mind showing the aerial?
Okay, sure. So this is the west half, and again, there's the diagonal spaces. Glasses on. So Nycobing is where the bike lanes would start, is just beyond the edge of the screen here, but most of the pinch points are like in this area here between 4th Place North and 4th Place South, and then the next image and so we have a few pinch points. So here along Atterdag and through this section here are the other 2 areas where we have pinch points where we don't actually have enough room to fit a 5-foot wide bike lane if we keep the parking on the north side. And so whenever you deviate from Caltrans standards in your design, you have to get what they call a design exception. And so they have minor design exceptions and major ones. Major ones have to get sent up to Sacramento, and they have a whole committee that reviews them. And the minor ones are reviewed here in San Luis Obispo at the District 5 office. But basically, Caltrans has to evaluate the risk and liability to them for deviating from a design standard that's been very carefully vetted and engineered. And so if you, for example, you have a 4-foot wide or 3.5-foot wide bike lane and the parking's there and someone opens their car door and slams, and the bicyclist slams into the car door, the first thing the bicyclist attorney is going to do is look to see if it was, everything was constructed and built according to Caltrans design standards. And if it wasn't, then there's, kind of an open door for a lawsuit, and they'll go through the process of kind of interrogating Caltrans. Well, why did you allow this design exception and so forth? So Caltrans is very risk adverse, and so there's the possibility we could do the engineering and submit to them, and they would not approve the design exceptions. They are very supportive of bike lanes, and Caltrans as a whole is really trying to embrace more pedestrian and bicycle features into their facilities. So they are very supportive, but they have to, again, evaluate that risk and liability to them from deviating from their known standards. So they have a process for it. It does happen. At this point, you know, the staff couldn't really say one way or the other. I mean, it's kind of a 50-50 chance, I would say, for them to approve a design exception for narrower bike lanes if we keep the parking on the north side. Anyway, so that basically concludes the staff report. So I'm available for questions, and I'll pull up the last slide there. Hopefully. Oh, sorry. So with that, staff is seeking direction from the City Council whether to proceed with option B, option A. Also in the staff report, we mentioned that there's the bicycle master plan in the works right now. It's scheduled to be completed around August of this year. And the San Ynez Valley Traffic and Safety Study, which just got started this month, actually, beginning of this month. And that's not expected to be completed for about 1.5 years. And of course, there's always the alternative of canceling the project if the cost is viewed undesirably by the City Council. So with that, staff's basically available for questions and seeking your direction.
Perfect. Are there any questions of the staff report by the council?
Yes. In your map, Matt, did you show in the lots, did you include the lot that we just bought?
The map was intended to just focus on the parking along Mission Drive.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that the public can see the alternative areas to park also, like Solvang School, Vets Hall specifically, and the lot that we just bought that would have how many spaces?
Yeah, the lot, this will be called, identified as parking lot, city parking lot 5, and we estimate about 30 parking spaces.
Okay, and so if we were to take away the parking on Mission Drive, we're looking at replacement for 57 spaces. Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I think that depends on what route we're going on, right?
Yeah, if we were to eliminate the parking on both the north and the south side, just the parallel parking, not the diagonal, because the diagonal is in private.
Option B.
Yeah.
Okay. And Matt, just to kind of dovetail on what Karen's saying, the extra lot that she's talking about by City Hall that we purchased last year, about how many parking spaces could be added to that if it was just blacktopped?
Well, we did a preliminary layout, and of course we did leave space for 3 kind of large, kind of trailer-sized vehicles for the Solvang trolley and the horse trailer, and they actually have 2 trolleys and the horse trailer. So along the south side of that lot is where we had initially laid out, just in the preliminary layout, space for that to happen. And we would move the driveway. We'd eliminate the driveway on Oak Street and move that on to 2nd Street here. So we don't have one driveway that'd be in and out. And just, we might be able to get a few more spaces if we just cram them in. But we also have to comply with all the stormwater regulations. So whenever you add a bunch of asphalt or impervious surface, there are certain stormwater measures you have to take. So we do have to have a little bit of the landscaping there along Second Street, you know, behind the sidewalk that's there across the street here. So we have to leave a little bit of space for that. So really, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but.
Yeah, just only relative, because as we talk about taking away parking somewhere else in the city, I just want to know what other opportunities we have to add parking.
Yeah, we estimate 30. We might be able to get a couple more. We will definitely try. We're going to try to maximize, the number of spaces, of course.
And that's my question.
But, yeah.
Perfect. Are there any other questions of staff at this point?
Yeah. Do you have any intuition or study that shows the impact on the flow of traffic?
That's a good question. Basically, if you remove all the parking, right now, I mean, you've lived here many years and seen, the traffic does slow down a little bit when someone's trying to back in and parallel park. So if you eliminate all the parking, you're going to eliminate those people stopping and kind of looking or waiting for someone to pull out. Sometimes people are waiting for someone to pull out and they try to kind of squeak in, front ways. So by eliminating the parking on both sides of the street, we'll have the positive effect of allowing the traffic to flow a little bit better. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference, but it definitely will be a slight improvement because of eliminating those people looking for spaces and backing in and cars having to wait and all that. We have a lot of fender bender kind of minor rear end accidents along Mission Drive, and that's partly also due to people looking for parking spaces. So that'll be an improvement, but of course that'll push some of that traffic onto the side streets as people look for parking, elsewhere.
Rick, did you have a?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Tucson, members of the City Council. Councilmember Waite asked a question regarding the school parking, and we took a look, and there are 63 additional spaces that the city can use for the school parking. That's just right up from Mission Drive. That would be on holidays and on weekends.
That's correct, yeah.
Matt, I'd like to continue. How would bicycles affect the flow of traffic? Assuming you took out the cars, right? Now we've got a faster flow of traffic, potentially, and you have bikes going on the same route, same path. Does that hinder or does it have any effect on the traffic?
It's one more thing a driver has to look out for. So, we haven't done any kind of modeling or anything of that or kind of detailed analysis, but the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. So that's the same speed limit, the prima facie speed limit in a residential area. So it's pretty slow speed, and we do have all the crosswalks and the traffic signals and so forth. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, so I apologize.
Kind of. I'm thinking of Santa Barbara because they've done it, especially like Lower State Street. And when I'm down there, I frequently see this problem where cars are trying to deal with pedestrians as well as bicycles and vice versa, and it's just not a good idea. So I was just kind of curious if any studies have been done, and I'm not even sure how to that study would be framed in terms of number of accidents or things of that nature.
Yeah, so like I said, we haven't really done any study of that, but my guess is that it wouldn't have a significant effect.
Could you use Santa Barbara as a proxy? State Street?
No.
They don't have the similar setup? Frequent crosswalks, bike lanes, parking on the road.
But you're trying to understand whether or not having the bike lanes and more bicycles traveling up and down Mission Drive would cause the traffic to slow down or back up. Is that what you're asking?
That's generally what I'm asking, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't really evaluated that. So
I think State Street is much wider.
It is.
It's much wider.
So this isn't going to be.
And you have to keep in mind right now there already are bikes on 246. So when you're sitting there, at Succulent, any other restaurant there, having lunch, you're going to watch bicycles drive by. And
so we already have the problem.
Right.
And you think this is going to solve that problem?
I'm just answering the question that we already have them. I'm just telling you that they already do go down 246 normally. So They're already there. They already have an impact. Did you have something on?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, what I was discussing with the Public Works Director is you're correct. Right now, you currently have bicyclists on 246. There is no bike lanes right now.
Right.
And so they have to share the road with the traffic. The proposal that's before you would take away the parking that would allow them to have their own lanes. That way you would think that there would be more safety for the bicyclists.
And less drag on traffic.
Yes.
Okay.
And from that perspective, even though you would have less traffic on 246, one could surmise that it might be a better flow of traffic because you're not having people trying to stop, parallel park, and get out of the car, which slows down the traffic as they're trying to make that maneuver.
Or total my car like they did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Perfect. Are there any more questions of staff? All right, with that, we'll move on to public comment. I have one speaker slip from Ed Skip.
Thank you, Mayor Toussaint, City Council members. Matt's presentation was very enlightening. A couple of things he brought up that I'm going to take a step back. First of all, I wasn't really wild about having the bicycle lanes brought on the City Council agenda several months ago. To me, that particular item was kind of shoehorned in, and not a lot of people realized the bicycle lane was going to be part of taking traffic off of Mission Drive. That said, you have done it. Now we're talking about what the options are. I actually feel that you should postpone the project at a minimum of wait for the master plan and the St. Annes Valley traffic study. The concerns I have, I do have a question for Matt. For the 16 diagonal parking places, would they be removed from the parking system, or would they remain?
Yeah, what's proposed by the staff and what was considered in the cost estimate is those parking spaces would remain.
Remain.
Yeah.
So what you're going to have on one side, if you use the, I believe it is, okay, the option, the traffic going bicycle lanes on either side, you're going to have in one area individuals backing out into a bicycle lane, which to me would not be very safe in the first place because bicyclists think they would be in the bicycle lane safe and everything. And you get a couple trucks parked in there and they could pull out in front of a bicyclist and be all over. To me, and option B or A, which I'll take that back, whatever the option is, that on the south side, there you're going to have traffic going either direction on the bicyclists, which to me would be real scary for the bicyclists because they would be going, someone would be going head on in traffic, which to me would be scary. To me, you're coming up with a solution where you need to take a look at the risk and rewards of each process, and I don't see that has been done. You're trying to make an option either A or B, but you have not done a risk and rewards study of the options. I think that needs to be done before anything goes much further. The other option or other comment I'm going to make is Ms. Waite mentioned other parking places. The cost of one was $175,000. The other one was $240,000. But if you're utilizing new parking lot 5, you're going to have a substantial cost in paving that also. So the cost should not be one of the major concerns. To me, the major concern should be safety of both pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. Taking the bicyclists off will not, or the cars off, isn't going to move up the traffic very quickly because you still have 4 unregulated crosswalks where tourists think they own the road and they still cross in the middle of the traffic. they will slow down the traffic. You don't see, you have some traffic slowdown with parallel parking, but most of the traffic slowdown comes with tourists and pedestrians walking on the unregulated crosswalks. I see my time is up, but I would really prefer that the City Council go back and take a look at the option C, which would be to postpone the project till we have more data from the bicycle safety study, and what was the second study? The valley-wide, the traffic and safety study and the bicycle master plan. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other speaker slips on this particular item, but I do notice, Joan Jamison, I have a speaker slip from you. It says item number 7. Were you by chance turning on this item here? Okay. I was just curious. You're one of the 3 that voted for this last year. I didn't know if you had any input on it. I would love to, actually. That was my roundabout way of getting to it.
Good evening. My name is Joan Jamison. I'm a resident of Solvang. I tend to agree with Ed Skitt as to postponing the project until we have a bigger picture of what's going on in the bicycle world in the San Ynez Valley. I know that we do not have the funding to do what we want to do over in the Creekside area. That was turned down. So that kind of puts us back to square one over there. I want to see the big picture. I don't want to piecemeal this, and I think that's what we're doing at this point in time. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Aaron.
Evening, Aaron Peterson, Solvang. I hope we're not trying to speed traffic up through town with anything we're doing on 246. I mean, the traffic caused through town, it's an hourglass turned on its side. It's not created by Solvang. Most of it's created by Buellton growth and East Side Valley growth. And they happen to come through because we stupidly eliminated all the bypasses over the decades. Silliness. So now we funnel it all through, and it's on our backs. It would divide our town to put the speed limit faster. It would divide our town to have it go quicker. It would divide our town to, if you build it, they will come, and more people will use it as a commuter from Buellton to Santa Barbara, from Lompoc through Buellton to Santa Barbara. There was a ton of traffic coming up right now, and the restaurants are closed, a lot of them tonight. It's Monday, and there's no tourists. It was a dead day in town. It's a lot of commuting traffic. The study we did needs to be redone to see what that traffic is. Having said that, I am absolutely in favor of bike paths and bike lanes all over. I sat on a bunch of committees with Kristen Bungeon when she was at the parks. We looked at Sunny Fields and getting bike lanes through Lot 72 down behind the Mission and in the Trust property down to Alamo Pintada. We looked at it going into the park and getting it down to the flats. Those are actually bike paths, not bike lanes. We looked at bike lanes on 246 also as a way to eliminate some of the congestion of bikes. There's not a lot of people that ride bikes to Solvang School. Drive by there. A couple of you live right there. There's 2 or 3 bikes every day. There's not a lot of people that commute to work as they do in San Diego where my kids live. It's a lot of recreational bike tour groups that are coming through town. Those guys will go down 246. They will go down 246 to Nielsen's building and Nielsen's lumber on both sides with a 2-foot, heck, they go on the pass, for goodness sake. This plan, if we're going to do it, eliminate the parking on both sides and do it right. I mean, widen the darn street. Don't just do a halfway mark where we get them to Pine Street and dump these poor families to have to cross to Pine Street to get to Old Mission. Makes no sense. The city owns the lot in front of my house with the windmill below ARM. Put a bike lane down there and get them down Alamo Pintada. There's other ways to do it. Don't have them, or put a light in at Pine, which is, it's years away and millions of dollars. A lot of these things are heavy duty. The bike lane to the park to get down to the flats, past to the flats where it's wide enough to the Skip Mesa entrance is lots of money. That needs to be done. If we want to solve it, let's solve it. I don't want to just build a bridge to nowhere. We're going to get them from 5th Street to Pine Street and stop it. Doesn't make a lot of sense because it's a cost-benefit analysis. All the costs that we keep bantering around is about $200 grand to do the work. Every parking spot that you guys have, and I've paid in lieu fees before, are $12,000 a piece. You eliminate 21 parking spots, it's $250,000. You eliminate 56, it's $680,000. To put parking here, when people parking from Memorial Hall and use it, is silly to think they're going to walk 5 blocks over. They don't even know Solvang School is there as a parking lot. There are locals that use Mission Drive for parking. And back to your point, Councilwoman Waite, you're absolutely right. It's atrocious that we allow parking in a bike lane on Alamo Pintada. We have to paint that red. We have to get a parking and a bike lane like they have in Los Alamos, like they have in Buellton. We've got to do it correctly. Sometimes doing a little bit is the wrong thing because it appeases people and it really doesn't solve the problem that I think that we have. Those are my issues. I'd like to see it. I wish we had more money. We have money. Let's do it right. I don't even know if the study's going to come out and do it right, but we need to handle what we have here, and we need to handle the bike lanes in town. We absolutely have to. It's paramount for safety and for the town and the quaintness of town.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, any other speakers on this item? All right, with that, we'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. Does anyone in particular want to start? Okay, Robert?
Thanks, Aaron. Aaron made a lot of the same points that I was thinking of too, and that one of the things that I do when there's items on the agenda that are not generally, these two, like the Yule Fest and the bike lane, affect the public and the businesses. So I try and talk to as many people as I can about these items, not so much the grant funding. And from talking to businesses and residents, they both think that I know it's anecdotal, but it's a bad idea. And all I ever do at these meetings is I make my points, and they're not necessarily in order. But as Aaron said, bikes don't come here to ride on Mission. I've been working out at the Marriott every morning at 4:30 in the morning for the last 10 years. I don't see the vans that I used to see. I don't think that biking, we still have, people love coming here to bike, but I don't think they come here to bike on Mission. They come here to bike on Fox and Canyon, Fig Mountain, et cetera. Again, if you build it, they will come. I think it will hurt, because if we ease things up, it'll get more traffic on Mission Drive, creating the east-west. We don't have the bike lane to the west. We don't have the bike lane to the east, so that doesn't do much good to have just the center and the thing. I think it'll cost the merchants money by not having parking in front of their stores. I would rather see it be put on the capital improvement plan or canceled. Solvang School, as Aaron said, is not that utilized. The kids don't ride their bikes to school in this town. My kids didn't, and they're both just graduated from high school. That is about it. And so I would rather see it go to the master plan or wait for the master plan or the 1.5-year safety study or cancel it. I don't think we need it right now.
Okay. So anyone else have any comments on this?
Yes, I do. I attended the San Ynez Valley traffic and safety study that we had here at the request of Tracy Contreras from SBCAG. And we had representatives from SBCAG and Caltrans. I am very much in favor of having bike lanes or paths, whatever would work. But I want to do it right. I don't want to do it halfway. There was discussion from Caltrans and other representatives that represent SBCAG, who spoke about having it connect all the way from Buellton all the way here, not just ending where the current slides suggested. So although I would love to eliminate the traffic on both sides of the road and throw in the bike lanes, I think it has to be done correctly, and it should be done all the way from Buellton all the way down to past Nielsen Center, just to get it done safely and get it done right. So I would like to wait to see the bicycle master plan, and I do know that we will be doing a bus tour at some point to take a look at various issues with traffic flow, and I think that would give us a better idea of how this problem could be solved.
And I'll just note right now that you pretty much took all my talking points. But I too, I mean, I do know when we pushed for this last year, one of the directions I was also trying to leave staff with was ways of finding more efficiencies in terms of, timing of lights, things like that. I think a lot of these things will get addressed in that bigger SB-CAG study that we have going on right now, as well as the bicycle master plan. So my other note would here be, I don't think we're expecting this kind of cost here in the budget adjustments. So anyway, and I actually really like the idea that Ed Skip brought up, which was the risk and rewards, kind of option to go through on this and really come up with a well thought out game plan for solving here. Those are my comments. I don't know if Daniel or...
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the audience for coming up and speaking on this topic. I agree with everybody who spoke. Unfortunately, I'm not convinced that I should rephrase that. I'm convinced that we do need to go to postponement and wait for these studies. I'm a big proponent of biking and making for a healthier community, a more vibrant community, but I'm also a big proponent of safety too. I used to ride my bike as a kid and teenager all over town, and luckily at that time there wasn't the traffic there is today. So I'm all for postponing this project.
Daniel, do you have any comments on this?
I'm fine with that. I just wonder why everything takes so long and we got to wait till August. I just feel like nothing's going to ever get done if we keep having to wait for this many months to get these reports out.
Yeah, if I could just add a comment. So Solvang was not a master plan community like Laguna Niguel or the city of Irvine or Calabasas or some cities like that. So Solvang was developed and subdivided a little bit here, a little bit there, and I know some of our council members live on Laurel Avenue and know, there's parts of the town that don't have sidewalk, don't have curb and gutter. We have all different kind of size and shape lots all over the place. So a lot of times when you want to accomplish something, you have to do it incrementally. And so, for example, we're finishing up right now the Second Street storm drain project, but actually that's just phase one. Phase two will go along with the construction of the parking lot here. And the same thing with bike lanes or improvements on Mission Drive. If you want to do a project from end to end, the cost is going to be huge. So sometimes doing things incrementally, you do definitely want to have thought it through so that you don't have kind of a half-baked plan that you're trying to implement. But so, for example, in our 10-year capital plan is a project to widen Highway 246 Mission Drive from Pine Street down to Alamo Pintado Road. And the idea is the road would be widened on the south, and that mostly is property owned by the city, and just below the AMR office there. So we don't need to acquire right-of-way or anything along that stretch. And you'd widen it to the south side. You'd shift the center line over so you can get bike lanes on both sides, proper bike lanes on both sides. So you'd have to widen the road maybe like 12 feet or something, but to accomplish that. But that is a project in the 10-year plan. So the staff has tried to think through some of this, and especially when the city council started talking about bike lanes on Mission Drive and everything, and the previous study, we started having these things in mind. And of course, that stretch of Mission is really narrow and probably kind of the worst part in town. But we have the same thing on the west side by Hans Christian at Anderson Park and the Nielsen's Lumber. But anyway, so the point is, some of the stuff, that's what the staff is faced with. In order to accomplish things in the long term, we have to sometimes do them incrementally. So.
All right. Does anyone else have?
That's a very good point, Matt.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So with that, do we have any motion on the floor?
I move that we postpone the project. Sorry about that.
Okay. I guess one thing I would kind of like to do is maybe at some point entertain some kind of goals session over this, because that would probably provide a lot of valuable feedback into some of these other studies going on here, like the Bicycle Master Plan.
Sure, that's excellent comment, Mayor Toussaint. So the plan is right now, as the bicycle master plan progresses, when we have a draft, we're planning to, well, SBCAG is the agency, doing that project. But once they have a draft, there will be projects within the Solvang city limits that will be proposed in there. And the staff plans to bring that back to the city council for review and input. So then the staff can go back to SBCAG and let them know what our city council would like to see. And then if the final product we'll bring the final product back to the city council, and if it meets your satisfaction, you have the option of implementing that portion, the Solvang portion of the Santa Ynez Valley Bicycle Master Plan as the city's bicycle master plan.
So that'd be an appropriate time for us to workshop this a little bit more.
Right. So you'll see it at least twice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So with that, we have a motion on the floor to postpone item number 6. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Dearness?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes, and that passes the 5-0. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 7, grant funding policy. And I believe we'll get a staff report by our finance director, Sandra Featherson. I'm sorry, administrative services.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Sandra Featherson, Director of Administrative Services. Tonight I'm here to talk about your grant funding policy, so I thought I'd do a quick recap of how the process has worked in the past. So typically around early February, we release basically a call for requests from local agencies, and the application information's online. The applicants fill out the information, I review it and put together a summary for the Finance Committee of the City Council. And then the Finance Committee reviews all the applications, makes recommendations for each agency on potential amounts, and then those amounts are put into the preliminary budget. And then usually at the preliminary budget hearing, I'll talk about last year, but usually at the preliminary budget hearing, the agencies would come and make presentations, and then council would decide, and those amounts that would be final would go into the budget for the next, at the final budget hearing in June. So last year, the policy was changed a little bit to recommend that you put a cap. You know, we have so many agencies coming. Last year we had, I believe, 21 different agencies coming to the city requesting funds. So I suggested last year about this time that maybe you put a cap on how much money you distribute. And so the council agreed at that time to cap it to 3% of the prior year general fund revenues. And so what we did was we put that cap in the prelim budget for last year, and then at the final budget hearing, the agencies came and spoke, and then amounts were awarded. So that's typically been the process. Tonight, I really just want to find out, do you want to continue with that same process? Do you want to talk about any other options? And I put a couple in the staff report, such as, do you want to maybe come up with some priority focus areas where you give priority to maybe agencies helping seniors or literacy or whatever programs they might be. It could be an example of maybe how to determine priority when you're looking at different agencies to grant funding to. This year also, it'll be slightly different. The Chamber of Commerce has a contract with the city, so they would not be in the mix for a potential distribution because that would be negotiated separately. SCVB usually does their presentation and pitch at this time, but that amount is also decided separately. And the library, which previously had been money requested by the Friends of the Library group for the Solvang Library. Now that the Solvang Library is transitioning, we think, to Zone 4 for Goleta, that request has already been made, and we anticipate they'll be making a request from Goleta for administering the library, so that would be separate as well. So with that, just a couple things. So last year, the approved amount that we gave to agencies, not including the SCVB, the Chamber, or the library, was $221,000, and that represented about 2.7% of the 17-18, or the 18-19, if you just look at this year, the general fund reserves. Also put an example. So Buellton does their process a little bit differently. They had 6 agencies request funds versus our 21. And what they do at their council meeting is everybody kind of ranks how much they want to give each agency, and they take an average of the 5 council members, and that's how much the agency receives. So they do their process a little bit differently, just as another example. So with that, I'm available for questions, but you could vote to keep the current process in place or amend the policy or amount that you want to distribute going forward or any other changes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions of the staff report?
Is there such a thing as a dumb question?
No.
Okay. Are there any, there's a lot of valley-wide organizations that get money from Solvang. Are there any groups in Solvang in particular that are not getting funding because of other groups outside of Solvang that are getting funding?
Well, the only reason the agency that didn't get funding last year was because they were not available for a presentation. So pretty much any agency that asked last year received funding.
Okay, thank you.
Do you remember what percentage we gave away last year?
2.7%.
2.7. Okay, that's right. Okay. And that does not include the library,
the chamber, or SCVB.
and the SCVB. Okay. And do you know what the total percentage was, including all of those organizations last year?
So the total amount you gave to all those organizations for fiscal year 18-19 was 1.4 million. So out of about the general fund reserves, it's about 17% of the general
Based
fund.
on revenue or expenses?
Revenues.
Budgeted or actual?
That's budgeted for 18-19.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? With that, we'll move to public
Wait,
comment.
I got a quick question.
Sorry.
So in previous years, the Chamber and the SCVB and the library were given grants. Is that correct?
Yes.
And last year, they changed that, and then at least the 2 of them were given contracts.
A little bit. I mean, the SCVB has always had a contract with the city. They are the tourism promoting arm of the city. We have a contract for them. But every year they would come to the council at the budget time and request how much money they wanted for the following year. They had been historically just part of this agency funding, although they were a separate line item, weren't included necessarily in the grand scheme of things. But their ask was typically at the budget period of time. The chamber has received money back the first time in, let me see, back in 14-15. And at that point in time, that was to help out with Third Wednesday. So the big event that they put on the third Wednesdays of the month. Then we had also agreed, then the money grew in 16-17 to help them publish the business relocation guide. And then from there in 17-18, they asked for $85,000. That was to help support an additional, I think, half-time staff person and some other programs. And then last year, 18-19, for this fiscal year, the amount requested went up to $250,000. And it was decided at last year, as part of the preliminary budget process, to do a separate contract with them, so that they would not necessarily go through this process every time, but that contract would be negotiated separately with the council.
And what was that for, the $250,000? Because you were very clear about the previous amounts and what they went to.
I believe it's for some additional programming and some studies that they wanted to run. Is that correct?
Yes. Members of the City Council, our finance director is providing you what the specific money was used for, because it's after the fact. The money that is there right now is in the budget, and so if we're here a year from now, we could tell you what the money was used for, but they're using it for contract services, and my understanding is also possibly for some of the part-time help, and they're doing a economic development strategy as well, along with a number of other things.
And that strategy report was $50,000 plus 85 or 100,000, 150, so it's still another $100,000 that they're using toward, we don't know yet, but we will find out a year from now.
Actually, the chamber will be giving a presentation on the 11th at your next city council meeting, so you can ask that question. That'd be an appropriate question for the chamber executive director at that time.
And you could also get a copy of the contract that the chamber was given last year, and that detailed out the services that they were going to be performing for that money.
For that money?
Yes.
I have a question.
I'll look into that.
Well, the money that the chamber brings in, though, is part of its contract, part of its member dues, correct?
A small portion.
Well, the funding for the chamber would only be coming from the city is what you'd see there. Now,
Correct.
their
No, I
budget
know that,
over
but
there.
with their budget also, they all have, anybody belongs to the chamber pays yearly
Yes,
dues, right?
correct.
That's outside of this.
Yeah. That I knew.
Are there more questions?
Yeah, I got a question. So just out of curiosity, the CBB, the presentation was great and everything. Do we ever, since it's a contract with them, do we ever accept other contract presentations? You know, generally in business, you would accept multiple options and then you would decide, hey, we want to go with this company. I'm just wondering if that's ever come up, or is that an option, or is it only? I mean, basically, we're in this contract with just them. Is that how it works, and no one else has an opportunity to come in at all, or?
Well, because they're a local organization that there's the Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau, that's the one the city's funding. I don't have history greater than 6 years that I've been with the city, and that has never come up. I think the agreement has been that they are the tourism and marketing arm, just like the Buellton Conference and Visitors Bureau is the Buellton's marketing arm. So I don't know, Dave, if you have any more history on that.
No, I'm afraid I don't. The initial formation of it has some unusual factors to it. Brown Act coverage is unusual for a private entity such as that, and I think that came out of the desire to have openness and transparency for the funding sources. But other than that, I don't have a lot of detailed information about the formation.
So basically, I guess I just feel like we're funding this, but in reality, we don't have a lot of control over it. Besides that funding, correct?
Correct. I mean, the council
as far as
could choose
organization
to-
goes.
Right. Well, at the time, you know, as we're getting ready for the budget hearing, you could certainly make a change to their budget for the
Right.
upcoming year.
Okay. Just wondering.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question for Daniel.
Sure.
Who would you suggest that would direct them and direct how they would spend their money and how they would go about promoting tourism? I mean, just to me, it sounds as though you almost want to outsource this, or you want to look at other ways, or you want to control how they spend their money. So who within the city of Solvang and the staff would you suggest, or what department would you suggest would even manage something like that?
No, I'm just saying, if the city of Solvang is giving $1 million out, I'm just wondering if that's the best way to spend $1 million. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it isn't the best way. It could be the greatest way we could possibly do it. I'm just trying to understand exactly how that came about.
And I fear we're starting to leave. This is questions of
Yes.
staff right now, so
I would
we
agree.
can pause this and continue it.
Okay, now I understand. You want to see where it's going, how it's being spent, and
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Well, isn't it true in other cities the same function is done perhaps with an economic development department? I know Lompoc was doing that.
Well, I think some cities, they'll have someone that more or less does this. They have their own department, whereas here we kind of have this separated out, right?
Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Each city is different. The cities that I've been familiar with in the past have all contracted with a private entity to do conference visitors bureau type of services to attract businesses. Some cities do have an economic development manager. Those are larger cities. I don't know of really any city probably under 30,000 that has the availability to have a full-time staff person to do this. And industry-wide in the state of California, this is pretty much the standard operating procedures that other cities have. They do contract with the private firm. A lot of times it's the chamber. A lot of times it's affiliated with the chamber to do conference and visitor bureau services to attract tourism. So this is very common in the industry. A lot of, there's not a niche out there for companies, so it's not really lends itself to like an RFP for services. It's normally a one-shop type of operation from that perspective.
All right. Any more questions of staff? Perfect. With that, we'll go to public comments. I have one speaker slip. Joan Jameson.
Good evening again. My name is Joan Jameson, and I'm a citizen of Solvang. I just want to take you back in history as to where the funds come from for the nonprofits in the city of Solvang. And this is called the history of Measure Z. Back in the day, the city council heard loud and clear from the citizens of Solvang. This was in 2010. Start spending some of the income from the tourist industry, like TOTs and sales tax, on the citizens of Solvang, not just on the tourist area of Solvang. Help our citizens to have a better quality of life. Okay, the council listened, the council heard, and the council acted on the request of the citizens. We determined, the council, that it was worthwhile to put a measure on the 2012 ballot to increase the TOT. This meant that tourists would be paying for a better quality of life for the people of Solvang, not the Solvang citizens. Please note that the council tried to do this 2 times before, and it didn't pass. The Citizens Committee was created at this time. There were 14 of us. I was one of the representatives from the council. Solvang's for Measure Z, heads and beds. The door hanger design, I didn't bring it with me, hanger designed by Carla Deuce told the story. We raised funds as a committee. We had committee meetings at Aaron's Greenhouse Restaurant, had community informational meetings around town, bought ads in the local newspapers. We walked and we walked and we walked the neighborhoods. Our selling point was that the tax would be paid by the tourists and the locals would benefit. 2% of the TOT would be used for nonprofits and improvements in the community that would benefit the Solvang citizens. This time, the TOT increase passed, allowing the City Council to help enhance the life and experiences and the quality of life of the citizens of Solvang, be it the arts, senior and youth programs, activities, funding for needy families in Solvang, provided like agencies of people helping people. You have a list of organizations that provide services to our citizens and enhance the quality of all of our lives. Thanks to the increase of the TOT, you also have an application form which has evolved over the years. When I first came on the council, somebody would hand us a piece of paper and say, we'd like $25,000 this year. They had it. It was very uncomfortable for me. I said, I can't do this anymore. We have to change the process. We have to have an application. Can I finish,
yes,
please? Okay. You have I started this. You have a list of organizations, and thanks to the increase in the TOT, you also have the application. In the beginning, before my time on the council, I told you what had happened. It was a piece of paper. As time progressed, we realized that we needed further documentation. We had some pretty sketchy people that came and asked us for money upon times. I agree that we need to bring the donations back to the original 2% that we promised the public that we would give them for their needs. That being said, to lessen the contributions to less than 2% to nonprofits would be going back on the word of the council of that time and the Citizen Committee of 2012. And please note that some of the organizations that receive funds actually bring tax dollars back into the city. Danish Days Foundation, PCPA, Rotary with the fireworks, Solvang Theater Fest, plus the various museums. I know you'll do the right thing and continue to fund these organizations. It helps increase the quality of the life of all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Esther?
Esther Jacobson-Bates, Elverhoy Museum of History and Art. Thanks for having me back up. I hadn't planned on speaking right now, but I wanted to just add a little bit to the conversation. The support that the Elverhoy receives from this council and from our community is integral to our success. We're a small but mighty organization. We have a lean and very tight budget. And we've been very fortunate to be recipients of generous grants from the City Council, most recently $30,000 for this fiscal year. And it really does allow us to expand what we do and have a much greater outreach. And an example of that would have been at the Adventures in Storytelling this past weekend, which was definitely a community event. I think that what's really important too is the cultural component that our museum brings to the area, and the other organizations that also are supported, that really add to the fabric and the quality of the fabric of life in this community. I also wanted to compliment Sandra and the city staff on the application process. It's really, last year was a huge step up. It made it very easy, I'm assuming, for the council members to look and compare the requests. The application process required a certain level of knowledgeability and transparency within the organization. And I really value that too, because there were times when there were organizations that were given money without a lot of accountability. And I think that as both a executive director and a resident of Solvang, I think is important. But I definitely encourage you to continue this process and look at the impact it has on the quality of our community and way of life. And I thank you for all of the support that we've gotten in the past and look forward to working with you this year and going ahead.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. Does anyone in particular like to start? Sure. Karen?
I am going to take the side of our speakers, and I feel very strongly that our grant funding should go to organizations that bring the most back to the community and that are in need.
Okay. With that, I'll just say my focus when it comes to a lot of these things, I do agree they've gotten a little bit out of control over the year, and you kind of look at the graph and it keeps jumping up pretty fast. But my priority is going to be on seniors and culture. But I just wanted to be transparent about that. Aside from that, I have kind of a totally different perspective on how the budget should be done this year, which kind of negates this actual grant funding policy. But those are my comments for now. Daniel, do you have anything?
No for now.
Robert?
Many ideas and many thoughts, but no for now because I want to learn more.
Chris?
Yeah, I appreciate what everybody's been saying from the floor as well as from the council. And I agree, we need to give more focus to things that return value back to the community, especially for our senior citizens and the youth. Having said that, I'm all ears to hear what your proposals are.
So for me, I mean, I'm fine discussing in further detail this actual grant funding policy, but preferably what I'd actually like to see, because we have some very large expenses coming up here in Solvang. We have a new wastewater treatment plant that we have. That's a big decision. I don't know how often that comes across a city the size of Solvang, but that's anywhere between a $10 to $15 million expense. And then we also have the stormwater management problem, and that's also going to be another new item coming into our budgets here. So with those items starting to tackle on our budget, I really feel that we need to take a little bit different of a tack this year with our budget. So what I'd actually like to do is redirect staff to come back and start working on a zero-based budget this year, and possibly consider doing it on a 2 or 3 year type budget basis.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, just to comment, the wastewater treatment plant is a special enterprise fund, not the general fund, and the stormwater management plan would be coming out of special revenue funds and not the general fund. Excuse me? Stormwater is general fund in Solvang? Okay. And so what we're talking about this evening is the general fund. We understand your concern regarding the budgeting module. What we're looking at, because the application process is upon us for these special grants, is whether or not the city council would like staff to continue to pursue accepting special grants for this next budget process. And if so, is the current guidelines appropriate, or do you want to set new guidelines? We've heard seniors and youth seem to be two of the focuses right now. But we're in culture, and we're just trying to identify what those priorities would be, and then also if it would be acceptable to start receiving applications from interested parties.
I would recommend we go with that. Go ahead and take the applications. It doesn't mean we have to accept them. We can always address that later.
Yeah. So again, my position remains the same. I would like to do a zero-based budget this year. And we could take applications for all this. It would just be determined when we go back through that budgeting cycle. As far as the stormwater management, last year during our goals session, there was a high priority on the council being able to find a way to fund that without having to put a further tax on the people that live here. So that would be an item that we'd be focusing on finding a way to fund out of the general fund. And then with regard to the replacement of the wastewater treatment plant, I do understand that that is an enterprise fund and that's handled completely separate, although I'd also propose a zero budget for the enterprise funds as well. But we do also have opportunities out of the general fund to contribute to infrastructure upgrades in our water or wastewater funds or our enterprise funds for capital type expenditures. So I'd like for that to be considered in the overall funding of those items there.
I'll echo what you're saying. We still have the issue with our pension and OPEB funding costs rising for the next 5 years. I think they're basically going to be doubling over the next 5 years, so that's something we have to keep in mind with respect to unfunded liabilities. And by all accounts, we're moving into a recessionary period, so money's going to be tight, and we have to look after the citizens' money.
I believe also, Rick, you met with the Sheriff's Department yesterday. Do you want to indicate to the council what kind of rate increases we're talking about here?
We had preliminary discussions with the Sheriff's Department on the contract for next year, 1920, and their initial proposal is about a 9% increase over current expenses right now. We talked to them. They're going to go back and try to fine-tune that a little bit more and sharpen their pencil, but that's what the preliminary look as we speak. So,
was that a one-time increase or annual?
Well, it basically becomes the baseline going forward, and so it would be incremental increase, I would assume. After that, the costs aren't going down; they're just continuing to, if not plateau, then increase, because you're talking salaries, you're talking retirement, you're talking insurance, and it's a pass-through. The county right now has had a kind of a paradigm shift on their model, and they're looking for full cost recovery now from cities that they contract with, whether that be Goleta, Buellton, Solvang, Carpinteria. So they're going around having those discussions with city staff so we can get prepared for when it comes to budgeting.
And my recollection, I believe last year when this came up, they're looking for, I think, a 25% increase, and then it was worked out that they were going to slowly eke that in over a period of time. So, I mean, you have to imagine that either way, they're looking for that 25% increase, plus every year that goes by, they're looking for their other normal increases. And then on top of it, full cost recovery mode. I mean, they're looking to get back recovery on their own pension plans and stuff like that. So as our pensions increase, even though we don't necessarily have them directly funded or have that department out of the city of Solvang, we still have to be concerned for it in terms of our budgeting, because it will be a rapidly increasing cost center. And it is one of our, that's about last year was a little over $2 million, I believe. It was about $2 million last year. So for the sheriff's contract.
It was about 1.7.
1.7. Okay, so I mean that is a pretty hefty chunk of our general fund. So that's going to be one of the cost centers that's going to be coming up. So anyway, it's several things. The reason why I'd be looking at doing a zero-based budget as well as some forecasting, so that we can really start prioritizing where we're spending our money and hopefully not drive ourselves into a hole.
All right, I agree with Ryan on that, and I'm very much for grants and giving out grants to agencies in need. But we really do have to take care of business first and get a handle on what we actually do have left over to give out. So I completely agree with what Ryan has just said.
So with that, do we have some direction or a motion?
So can I just confirm, so you
Yes.
want to leave the policy and the procedures the same, and we'll go back out and we'll request applications for the grants? And then the amount of money that you're going to distribute may be determined later by the budget. and how
Exactly.
things are going. Okay, great.
Perfect. So do we have a motion?
I think this is just staff direction to
Staff
keep it
direction.
the way it is right
Okay.
now and come back with budgetary issues at a later point. But there's nothing changing, in other words, so it's
Got
just
it.
staff direction to continue on.
So with that, we can move on to the next item. And we are now at well over 2 hours. So I think I'd like to call it a 5-minute bathroom break. All right, I'd like to re-adjourn the Solvang City Council meeting of January 28th, 2019. We'll start with item number 8, appointments to agency boards and committees. Can we get a staff report?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This item was continued at the meeting of December 10th until the vacant council seat was filled. Prior to continuing the item, however, Mayor Toussaint and Councilmember Waite were appointed to Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and the Air Pollution Control District boards. And Councilmember Waite was also appointed to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So in light of that, at this time, the council should appoint members to the following boards and committees: the California Joint Powers Authority, the League of California Cities, the Multi-Jurisdictional Solid Waste Task Group, the Joint Wastewater Committee, the Ad Hoc Finance Subcommittee, Ad Hoc San Ynez Band of Chumash Indian Subcommittee, Ad Hoc CCWA Membership Subcommittee, Ad Hoc Library Subcommittee, and the Ad Hoc Parks and Recreation Subcommittee. That is my staff report.
Perfect. Are there any questions of the staff report from the council?
Yes. Why isn't there a ad hoc economic development committee?
Oh, actually, we should have one, because we had one last year.
The Economic Development Committee was never actually set up as an ad hoc committee.
Could you add it to like the finance, make it an economic and finance committee, whatever? Would that suffice, or do you want it separate?
Well, before what we were doing was we were having agenda-sized meetings here in City Hall with, it was Holly and I think I did 1 or 2, because it got turned over to me right after Hans resigned.
If it's with a member of staff, it's probably just a council member meeting with a staff member rather than the formation of an ad hoc committee. When you're forming an ad hoc committee through council action, you can exempt from the Brown Act because it's less than a quorum or less than a majority of the council. When the council formally, however, sets up a committee, whether ad hoc or otherwise, that contains members other than the city council, then you're going to subject it to the Brown Act. So I suspect that particular meeting between you and staff members more on an informal basis than an actual ad hoc subcommittee.
Okay. I just could have sworn it was an actual ad hoc or something like that was on here.
To answer your question, it was on last year's committee, but there was some confusion as to whether or not it was formally an ad hoc committee. So there was some confusion there, and that's why it was removed from this year's.
So this year, if we more or less just want to assign somebody to performing that function with Holly, for example, then we could just add that in here as an ad hoc, right?
Well, if you're going to make an ad hoc committee that is formal action of the city council, then if it contains members of the public, members of staff that are not on the city council, you're going to subject it to the Brown Act.
So all we want to do is say, hey, 2 of the city council members are going to be in this committee, and then they can go out and figure out who they want to bring in whenever
Correct.
they want, and then it's not subject to the Brown Act.
Correct.
Right.
That's what we want to do.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the staff?
Can we add?
Yeah, can we add that?
Because that's a different function than the finance.
Yeah, I think we should add it. I think you're right.
It might be beneficial, Dave, if you also just re-summarize the difference between an ad hoc and a formal committee. Like, for example, we have the ad hoc finance committee, but then we also have the joint wastewater committee.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll go into it a little bit in the next item with the Brown Act as to what constitutes. If there's a formal action of a city council to establish a committee, if it has a standing jurisdiction, a regular set of meetings, even if it's less than a quorum of the city council, it will still be subject to the Brown Act. If, however, it's truly ad hoc, it just meets on occasion as issues come up, there's no set meeting schedule, and the issues come up from time to time, then it's not going to be subjected to the Brown Act. So you can go ahead and set those. So if you want to have an ad hoc committee of the council meeting that looks at bike lanes on 246 for the next 2 months, you can set that up without it having to be subject to the Brown Act. If, however, you want to set up a committee, a subcommittee ad hoc of the council that meets every month on a specific issue and has continuing jurisdiction, then you're going to be subjecting it to the Brown Act. Because it's really not ad hoc in that case. It's a standing committee.
You got it.
Even with 2 members.
But our ad hoc with ID number 1 was just a informal ad hoc, as opposed to the committee that we had with St. as CSD.
Okay, which one are you referring to here on the list?
So, for example, we have Joint Wastewater Committee, Ryan Toussaint and Joan Jameson, the
yes.
Third one down.
Yes.
That one was with Santinez CSD, and to my understanding, it was a formal committee. So we would actually meet here. It was agendized, and there was minutes, things like that.
Right.
And then with the ID number 1 ad hoc, which is it's called Ad Hoc Subcommittee CCWA. I'm not sure why it really got labeled that, but it's really just an informal meeting taking place between 2 council members with 2 board members from Improvement District number 1. And then occasionally, if we wanted, we could bring in staff.
Right, and if you take a look at that first line, it says consists of 2 members of the city council, and it was formed to discuss a possible merger. So the only action this council took was to say 2 members of the council will be on it. The fact that you went out and met with other members, whether they be members of the public, members of ID1, members of staff, that was not part of the formation of the actual committee itself. That's just what it did. So in the other instance where you have the 2 members that are from the council and 2 directors of the Santa Ynez Community Services District, if that was the original action from the council to set it up that way, then that's a formalized committee, even though it has less than a majority of the city council, and that's why you would have the Brown Act attaching to it.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions? All right. With that, we'll go for public comment. Does anyone wish to speak on this? There's no speaker slips, so we will move on to move this to council for discussion action. So with that, I'd actually like to start on this item because I would personally would just like to prioritize that any business that Karen and I had going on with the prior council keeps moving forward. I don't want to see a full change out every one of these committees because I think we could lose productivity. So with that, I'd kind of like to know from Karen if there's any particular committees or ad hocs that you would like to be on, that you had something going on, and obviously if you want to leave any of them, then just express that.
Okay, I do, because I've been added as the alternate. Okay, I would like to drop off the JPIA. Actually, I'm not on that one. No. I'm sorry, I meant I was looking at okay, thank you. I'd like to drop off of the solid waste task group.
And I believe that solid waste task group almost never does, it's pretty much inactive, right?
Can we get rid of it?
So maybe we should just drop it altogether?
I would recommend that we still keep it, even if
Okay.
it may be inactive, because they are looking at the Tehigas landfill, and there could be issues associated with that would call upon a representative from Solvang.
Got it. Okay.
And then Dave non-verbally shakes his head. Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Okay, so yeah, I want to drop off the solid waste task group. I would like to remove myself from the League of California Cities. And I would like to stay on Parks and Rec and the groundwater sustainability and stay as the alternate for SBCAG and APCG.
So right now we're only discussing the ones in the highlights since we've already, the ones at the very top that are not highlighted, we've already determined at a prior council meeting. So you're good on those ones. With that, I would like to stay on JPIA. Joint wastewater. The Finance Committee. And the ad hoc subcommittee, CCWA. I don't know if we could better label that one. And after that, it's, oh, I should probably, yeah, actually, the rest after that is fine.
You want to get off the library, or you want to stay on the library?
We don't really have a library anymore, do we?
I was just saying the ones that I definitely want to stay on. So after that, you know, I don't think it really matters how we assign things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. Okay, so I mean, after that, I think that kind of lets us know which ones are free. And as to answer your question about the library real briefly, I was on that last year with Joan Jameson, and the big thing that we got done during that was just leaving and going to GLEDA. Okay. So I don't, I still suppose that it could be somewhat active moving forward, because we'll have to continue working with GLEDA during that transitional process. Robert, I think, loves libraries, so maybe I think he's it. Perfect. So, so anyway, just to finish up the library thing real quick, I don't think that having a full change out there would impact anything going on moving forward. So with that, I think I heard that Robert has some interest in the League of California Cities and in the library.
And if you need me to serve on either one of the Indian Gaming or the ad hocs, I mean, I don't know enough about them, but I'm always willing to say yes to everything I get asked to do.
So I can make a couple recommendations. Okay. So for the California JPIA, that's the Joint Powers Insurance Authority. So it's somewhat like a League of California Cities, but it's going to do more with the insurance for the city of Solvang, as well as risk management. A lot of their presentations can seem somewhat redundant to what you might get at League of California Cities, because they'll kind of just mow over the same kind of stuff again. But then their focus is then going to be on insurance and risk management. Am I summarizing that?
Are you saying that there's a fit then between the California Cities and that body?
They're somewhat synergistic, but different focuses. Maybe Dave can.
Yeah, the League of California Cities is an association of the 483 cities in California. CalJPIA is a smaller subset of that, but it also includes special districts and other types of public agencies as a risk pooling entity. So the service is similar in that you have a vote per agency that's a member of CalJPIA, but the coverage is very different because CalJPIA is focusing more on risk management and reducing the claims and setting up policies to reduce the amount of exposure to the risk pool, whereas the League of California Cities covers a much larger type of gamut, and it's expected to cover a lot more than just the risk pooling.
So if you like the kind of League of California City atmosphere and stuff like that, then you might like JPIA.
Yeah, I will volunteer unless somebody else wants it.
Okay. I'm fine with you going there. And then we need to name an alternate, right? Yes. So I'll throw myself on there as the alternate. And then, let's see, the Multi-Jurisdictional Solid Waste Task Group. Would anyone want to volunteer for that?
That's the one that's kind of...
Probably you'll never have to touch it,
I mean,
but...
I can do that if you wish.
Okay.
I mean, if it's...
Robert. And then we got the Joint Wastewater Committee, which I would like to stay on, but we need one other member there. Oh, and this reminds me of something I want to bring up was this is the kind of the ad hoc with Santa Ynez CSD, and I'm wondering if they would make any sense to create an ad hoc for Los Olivos CSD as to start working with them and see if there's any potential here in Solvang for us to become more or less the regional plant for them. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think from the city's side, you certainly could. It would require reaching out to Los Olivos CSD to see if they have an interest in having that kind of thing, because the committee as formed right now is just the two directors of the San Ynez CSD and the city council. If you wanted to have a 6-member committee, then I'd recommend that at the next meeting of the Joint Wastewater Committee, you speak with the San Ynez Community Services District directors, say, hey, are you interested in adding 2 members, being Los Olivos? And if they're amenable to it, then you could go ahead and formally act on both sides to add those 2 members. Otherwise, the 2 members of one of the other committees might be able to do it, or you could set up a separate one to approach them directly.
Maybe we could give some direction to staff to reach out to that board and ask if they have any desire to do that with Solvang. And then if they do, then we could bring that back.
Sure.
Okay. So, so with that, I'd like to keep myself on there. Is there anyone else who would like to work on wastewater?
Yeah, I'll volunteer.
Okay, so that'd be Chris for
Joint Wastewater Committee.
For Joint Wastewater. For the Ad Hoc Finance Committee, I would like to stay on that. But I think it would be appropriate for our CPA on board here to be a member there.
Yeah, he should be at least one committee.
And then we got. Okay, so so the subcommittee with the St. Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, is that very active? What was the intent with that before? I heard at a prior meeting from Joan in the background that they weren't doing anything. So I'm not sure if there's any reason to continue this, or.
It sounds like from the description, it's meets on an as-needed basis. Whenever anything of mutual interest comes up that would affect the city of Solvang,
Like buying another hotel,
then
or things of that nature.
then they would be having to sit down and get together and meet.
Okay.
Yes.
The last time we met was in regards to the fire station funding.
Got it. Okay. So I don't know, Daniel. Do you,
Sure.
Okay.
Serve on that committee, yeah.
Anyone else? Who like?
Well, I would like to consider that because it sounds like it falls under economic development too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, economic development. If that is made, do we decide to make that a separate ad hoc?
No, but it's in the same law. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Based on what we heard, it seems like the only time they talk to the tribe is when there's an overlapping economic interest. And if that's the case, and if there's no economic development committee, I'd like to be on that committee.
There are some other issues that come up with the tribe from time to time, development on the tribal lands, allocation of wastewater resources. So there are issues beyond economic development, although certainly those can be an aspect of economic development because increased sewer capacity increases the possibility for economic development, and development itself can do that as well. So I just want to let the council know there are other issues that come up from time to time with the tribe.
That's actually a great point with respect to the wastewater treatment plant and reclaimed water, things of that nature.
Well, they have their own.
I know, that's a wonderful model. We should be looking at it.
So I'm sorry, did I hear any suggestions over
I
who?
think it was Chris and I, if no one.
Okay, so
Mhm.
is everyone okay with that?
Ad hoc finance. Okay.
And the
Chumash.
Okay.
Who were the members? Daniel.
Daniel and Chris for that one. The Indian Gaming Local Benefit Committee.
What is that?
Yeah, what is that?
Just about disbanded.
Just about. Okay.
It's, yeah.
Should we
End it?
put it? Should we put it on?
Get rid of it?
Should we put it on hiatus status?
I mean, 'cause it seems
No,
like
it's
you're-
not on hiatus status, but it is not currently
I
active.
was wondering if we should put it on hiatus.
Yeah, just don't put anyone in it.
Or
They're considering it. It's run by the county executive office, and there have not been meetings in
okay.
several years.
So maybe we'll just put that one on hiatus and reactivate if something comes up.
Well, as before, in case a meeting comes up, we'd like to have a representative
Oh, okay.
identified.
All right. Then maybe we should put Chris or Daniel on that since they're already on the. Okay.
Daniel, you're good at finance.
Which one, Mr. Mayor, which one? There's only one slot.
Oh,
right
there's
now.
only one slot for that one. Okay, so you two
Daniel.
can fight. There you go. Daniel's got it. He was quicker.
I didn't want it.
The finance committee is Ryan.
Yeah. We'll re-summarize at the end.
She's right.
And then we got League of California City Representative. Would be Robert. Okay.
Why
And
can't there be two? It
and I
sounds like
think-
fun.
There's usually an alternate to that one, isn't there? To the League of California City representative? I think there's usually an alternate because you actually go vote at that one. So if that person's unable to vote, you'd usually send up the alternate. And then we designate the council actually here has to vote on how that person's going to vote when they go vote. I think the same works for JPIA, right?
Yeah, the JPIA, I'm not sure how they push out the changes to their policies for voting purposes, but the league will typically send out the citywide resolution sometime in the late summer before the September meeting so that cities can have an opportunity to discuss whether or not they agree with the positions being recommended by the league's board of directors.
So then we discuss that here, and then that representative is supposed to go represent it that way. Okay.
And the League of California Cities only they only require one member per jurisdiction. It sometimes is different than the voting delegate. We can identify a different voting delegate. But the member for the year term would be just one member.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, normally what happens is come August, the League of California Cities sends out a number of resolutions for councils to consider for voting at their annual conference, and then they request no later than the end of August that the city council decide who is going from the council to the meeting and who will be the voting member and then the alternate member. So that would be different than this item.
Okay, so we only need to designate one person here. Okay, and that will be Robert Clark. Okay. And then we have the ad hoc subcommittee CCWA membership. I still question the title there. But I will stay on that one. If you have an interest in water, that is the local relationship with Improvement District Number 1, which takes care of the Santa Ynez general area. There's been talk in the prior councils. The position on it was to pursue potential merger type activities with them. So that direction could change with this council. Otherwise, that's my quick little high-level summary. So I would like to stay on that one there, but if someone else has an interest in water, I'd recommend that board for them.
Well, I do, only because I have an interest in reclaimed water.
Okay. Then we have the ad hoc library subcommittee. And I believe Robert volunteered for that one. Is there someone else like to be the alternate?
I'll be the alternate.
All right, then we got Daniel. And then for Parks and Rec, maybe we should just keep that one status quo, Karen and Ryan. Sound good?
Good.
And then we have the Groundwater Sustainability Agency representative. So Karen is the one heading that up right now, with me as the alternate. Changing me out there as the alternate would not slow anything down. I think Karen's got a good handle on it. And if anyone else wants to be on that just to go to the meetings and learn, then let me know right now.
Thank you.
Looks like I'm nominated then. Or do you want? Oh, okay.
Like Ryan.
All right. So I guess then that'll be me on that one.
Yay.
Is there comment from the? Oh.
From the peanut gallery.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
No, never mind. We're not on the next item yet.
Okay. So with that, I don't know. At least do you want to?
Did we do Economic Development Committee?
Oh.
I thought you were going to combine that with business.
No, it wasn't defined. In fact, I think it was just the opposite.
We were going to add it, right?
We're going to add the Ad hoc Economic Development Committee because they have two different priorities.
Should council like to create a economic development committee? Is this a as-needed basis committee?
Yes.
And what would the purpose of it be?
So before what was happening was, and I was just coming up to speed with it, but there is somewhat of an economic strategic plan that the city has, and Holly was last updating that spreadsheet from the last meeting's notes and priorities. So I was, and I think it was there last year, the Economic Development Committee. I think that's the only confusion I have, is I thought it was there last year, now it's gone.
It was on this list, but it was never, it was removed because it was never formally adopted by council as an ad hoc subcommittee.
Got it. So
we can adopt it, create it, put two council members in it, and have it right now.
yeah. Oh, or
Yes.
we could just, someone from council could say, I would love to work with Holly on that and
Oh.
have these informal meetings here, right?
I don't think you can do that. I think if you have this that you described, that becomes a Brown Act issue.
If one member of the council volunteers to meet with a member of staff, that's not a formal action of the council establishing a committee. If the
Agreed.
council establishes a committee that says one council member and Holly Owen, then that is going to be a formal Brown Act committee.
So I was thinking
Do
more.
we want to include it as a committee or not? Do we want
I
it
think
on
we
as
should.
a committee?
I think we should go with an ad hoc
Then
committee.
let's add it as a committee. Let's put two council members to it and move on.
Okay.
Boom.
Do we need one council member or two on it?
You're probably gonna want to.
How are we doing them?
If you're only going to have one council member, just have someone raise their hand and say, I'll be happy to do it. And then you're not actually forming any kind of committee. But you're going to want to have some kind of deliverable, so to speak. What is the idea of coming back to council? Is it a discussion with a member of staff, with one member of the council that is going to come back and report to the staff? Or is it just to try to generate information that can be brought back to the council as a whole by staff, as opposed to the council member bringing it back? If you do an ad hoc subcommittee where the two members, then the two members can work together and bring back to council at a later time, rather than having the staff do that.
Got it. So and last year, just so you know, it was only me on it, and then we would set up a meeting here with Holly, and then anyone else was welcome to do kind of just general public invite went out. So if we wish to keep moving forward that way, can we just name one person, or?
Sure, that's one way of doing it.
Okay, and then that doesn't have to go on this. Hey, can we? That doesn't have to then go on as a formal ad hoc.
No, it's up to the council how you want to formulate the policy subcommittees or ad hoc committees or simple responsibilities of the various council members to go and do a particular act. For example, the League of California Cities, you have one person doing that. You're going to go and represent the league. If you have one person who's going to go and speak with staff about something, you can do it with one member. It's really just, it's up to the council how you want to structure that interrelationship between the council and staff for that limited purpose.
Got it. So with that, do we have someone that wants to be on that? Wants to take that over?
Well, see, I disagree in the sense that I think the Economic Development Committee is more than just talking to staff. It's about talking to people in the community as well and trying to develop the vision. Am I wrong?
Which I still think you could do that. So you could work on that with Holly, and then I think last time it was kind of the Chamber of Commerce would help facilitate setting up a meeting here with the public.
I think what he wants to do is just create a ad hoc committee, put two city council members on it, and then they decide who they're going to go talk to, when they're going to go do it, just like the rest of these almost.
I would agree, because
and just give them the freedom to go out and say, hey, this is what we're going to be working on, and then they get together and do it, and then they bring it back. I think that's what.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Just to clarify, my understanding on these committees is normally they're requested to meet at the discretion of outside parties, as opposed to council members deciding when they want to meet with other people.
Why?
So I just want to get
I
that.
have no
I just
idea.
want to get that clarification. Like,
So we can't get together and talk unless we're invited by other people.
No. What I'm saying is, League of California Cities,
right?
They initiate the meeting, and we send our representative. The multi-jurisdictional solid waste task force, they initiate the meeting. We send our representative to the joint wastewater committee. That would be something that both mutually agree to between the city and San Ynez Valley Chamber or Community Services District. The Shumash Indians, they would initiate the meeting. We respond by sending somebody.
And we can't initiate a meeting.
Well, you can.
Yeah, like the finance
It'd be
committee.
like the finance committee.
Right.
In which a need is to get something through the finance committee, And so we request a meeting with the Finance Committee.
So the finance committee is not going to meet unless it's requested
That's the way
by
I'm,
someone else.
That's the way I'm reading this.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I don't
yeah,
know.
that's the way I'm reading this, and that's how I normally have interpreted it in other cities.
Does that
And that's why I'm just asking for a clarification.
And just so you know, last year, the primary thing we did with the Finance Committee was just budget. So it'd be.
Right, no, I understand.
Okay.
And so my question to you then is, why is that necessary? I mean, does it prohibit us from meeting when we want to meet?
No, it does not prohibit you from meeting. I'm just saying.
The purpose of the committee
The purpose of it is not.
To respond to somebody else?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
But
normally.
it's not necessary, for example, in the case of the Finance Department, our Finance Committee, they're not responding to anybody per se. So it would be very similar to that, wouldn't it?
Yes, and actually, the Finance Committee meets when city staff needs to bring something to the attention of the city council, but they meet with the subcommittee first to get their input before it comes to the city council.
Well, one of the things I envision for the Economic Development Committee is to meet with outside sources. For example, this group that came up, I guess, a week and a half ago and spoke while we were in Sacramento. It would have been nice to be able to be there and to ask them questions about the economic development of the valley as well as our town. And unfortunately, they're not coming back. We have to go to them. We have to go to UCSB, for example. I've tried reaching out to them a couple of times, and they're not exactly very responsive.
Is that the economic forecast meeting? Okay.
They sent me a copy of their PowerPoint. It was completely useless.
Yeah. Yeah, the intent on that one was a ECSB giving the economic forecast. They were the sponsors of the event, and they requested various city managers to make presentations. It was for invitation only. It wasn't open to the general public.
But we were all invited.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So the information that was provided there, I assume, was useful, right?
Yes, sir.
And probably useful in terms of guiding us with respect to our budget. And unfortunately, the only way we're going to get this is to go back to them physically. So that's kind of what I have in mind with respect to this development committee is to help develop the vision and strategy with the members of the public, as well as go and find information that is necessary to help guide us as well as a council.
So I guess if this is a reactionary type thing, maybe we should just say Chris is in charge of this to go out and look into this economic stuff, but you're not going to have a solid committee because then it becomes a reactionary committee, I guess, is what they're saying. Which I don't know.
I'm happy to do this by myself.
Well,
so last year was
I think
me
that's
by
what Ryan
myself.
was saying,
So maybe this year it could be you by yourself.
I'm happy with that.
You're currently working right now with the Chamber of Commerce on their strategic plan. So I mean, this rolls right into that type of a project.
Right.
Perfect. So with that, do we have some kind of direction here?
It was a single council member raising hand, so there's not a formal action for a subcommittee at this point, and so.
A motion accepting the appointments?
Yes, I think
Do we
that'd
need
probably
to
be a good
formally read
idea.
them out now after all that, or?
Unless the council has questions, we could probably read through them fairly quickly, and you could make a motion to that effect.
Okay.
But
Well, let's do that.
Okay.
Appointments, as indicated, are California JPIA, Robert Clark, alternate Ryan Toussaint. Multi-jurisdictional solid waste task group would be Representative Councilmember Clark. Joint wastewater committee.
Okay, got it, sorry. JPI, next, Ryan.
Joint wastewater committee would be Mayor Toussaint and as well as Councilmember Dearness. Ad hoc finance committee would be Mayor Toussaint and Councilmember Johnson. Ad hoc subcommittee, sending as Band of Chumash Indians, would be Councilmember Johnson and Dearness. The Indian Gaming Local Benefit Committee representative would be Councilmember Johnson. League of California City representative would Councilmember Clark. Ad hoc subcommittee CCWA membership would be Mayor Toussaint as well as Councilmember Dearness. Ad hoc Library Subcommittee would be Councilmember Clark and Johnson. And the Parks and Recreation Committee would be Councilmember Wade as well as Mayor Toussaint.
All right. I'll move those as is.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. We get a roll call.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Dearness?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Wade?
Yes.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 9, Brown Act training.
So I have a question.
And,
Go
well, I was just wondering if maybe we should push this to the next meeting. It's getting kind of late.
I'm happy to make it as long or as short as you would like, but at this point in time, because you've got a couple meetings under your belt, I think it is important to do it at some point. I would prefer to have it not longer, but I would prefer to get into the details of it because it is important. And while the sanctions criminally for violation of the Brown Act, the Political Reform Act are fairly rare, I'm more concerned about civil remedies that could be available. So I like to go into it into some depth. As entertaining as these things can be, I try to make it a little bit entertaining, but I'm happy to do it whenever you would like it. The shortest I've ever been able to do it.
I was only trying to be sensitive to Karen since she's got
the shortest I've ever been really able to give it a good go is about half an hour.
Okay.
So you might want to factor that into your time. I can do it in 20 minutes, but you're going to miss a lot of the good details of it, and we'll just be flying through slides.
Is there any scenario where I can go through the slides or online training?
Online training, probably not. The specific things that I'm covering in the specific way that I'm covering, there is information out there. If you want to look for it, the information that was included in your agenda packet, the League's Guide on Open and Public, that's a great guide, but it's a very detailed guide. What I had hoped to do is kind of cover the high points of the Brown Act, Political Reform Act, and conflicts of interest, as well as due process and adjudicative hearings, which is not something that would be covered in that. So it's up to the council. I'm happy to do it tonight. I'd planned on doing it tonight. I have the slides ready to go. If you'd like to kick it over to the next meeting, if there's a less of a workload at the next meeting, I'm happy to do that as well.
My next question was like, what if I don't stay for it?
Yeah.
You guys should do it.
Ask him.
So,
That's a good question.
Mr.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Really short meeting.
Well, and to a certain extent, I'm used to doing them when members of the public are there because sometimes they will have questions that ask questions about your service as well. So it's a valuable thing both for the council, which is covered by the Brown Act, and the public that is not covered by the Brown Act, but is the reason for the Brown Act.
Right.
So I can do it at the beginning of the next meeting. Mr. Hayden says that there is a lesser workload at the next meeting. If the council is inclined to do that. I would point out a couple of things that I would cover that will come up between now and then. You're going to have a closed session coming up for council, or I'm sorry, city manager candidates. Very important that information out of closed session stay in closed session. Any information that comes out, there are criminal violations that are possible for information that comes out of closed session inappropriately. If the council as a whole discloses that information and allows it to be disclosed out of closed session, that's fine. But individual members of the council are covered by the confidentiality of the Brown Act during those closed sessions, and that information really should remain confidential. I haven't seen too many criminal prosecutions of it, but there have been some where council members or boards of supervisors have disclosed information that was received in closed session without the permission of the entire body to release that information. So it's just something that could or could not come up on Monday, but because you have, or on Saturday, you do have a closed session meeting, I thought I'd bring that up.
So, but I just want to get to the bottom of it. It's up to you, Karen. Do you want to knock this out tonight with the Brown Act training, get over and done with, or I know you have to get.
I'm down to push to the next one.
I know.
I'm with you, Karen. If you want to push to the next one, I'm good. I have no problem with that.
Yes.
The bike lane process, for example. If I wanted to know, like an email, Rick, if I wanted to know if there had been a study done already, and I emailed one of the other council members, is that a violation of Brown Act, just to ask if there had been a study done prior to tonight's meeting?
If you're asking one other council member and one other council member responds to you, that's fine. If you ask two council members and two council members respond to you, you have a problem.
Got it. All right, thank you.
I'll second Daniel's suggestion to push this over to the next meeting.
Okay,
Well,
so
it'd be good to have the, I'm sorry, but it'd be good to have the public hearing.
I do think the public hearing would be great, actually.
okay, so we'll just table this one to the next meeting.
I'm good.
Please, yeah, at the beginning, so the public.
I'm happy to go to bed.
And then, so with that, we'll move on to council member reports. There shouldn't be much because we only had Karen and I on SBCAG and APCD, and I don't know if there's anything new since the last.
No, it all just revolved around transportation. Both the Air Pollution Control Board and SBCAG revolved around traffic and emissions and traffic flow and studies.
Perfect. And so with that, any public speakers on that item, I guess, right? Seeing none. We'll move on to item number 11, City Manager's Report and Advanced Calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, your next City Council meeting would be 2 weeks from this evening. As far as a regular City Council meeting, you do have a closed session that will be this Saturday starting at 8:45 in the morning here in the council chambers. For the next meeting, February the 11th, we will move the Brown Act training to the front of the meeting. And followed by that, we will have a couple of items. The presentation by the Solvang Chamber of Commerce on their quarterly report. Councilmember DeGerenis will be able to ask them the question regarding their expenditure plan for this year. That would be a perfect time to do that. Followed by that would be a consent agenda item on the Measure A 5-year local program of projects. We will then also have the 2018 financial highlights and some mid-year budget adjustments that staff would be bringing to you for your consideration. And then that would be followed by the water supply management plan that would be presented to you by Public Works. So we do have a fairly light agenda for the next meeting, so I think carrying over the Brown Act training would be good at the beginning.
What about the possibility of the presentation on solar energy for the wastewater treatment plant? Is that the 2 weeks from, 2 meetings from now, or is it next?
I think with that, that's an item that you're, so you could update the council now on that particular item while you're pursuing that vendor?
Sure. While we were up at League of Cities, we ran into a fellow who works for Johnson Controls, and he helped us understand that there are ways for cities to reduce costs through energy savings, and the first one would be lighting, street lights, and the second major use of energy in the city is wastewater treatment plants, ironically enough. So given the situation we're in with ours, I thought it was very timely that perhaps he came down, analyzed our situation, and see if there's any cost savings that he can show us and make that presentation to the council. I'd like him to go ahead and come down. I think he was talking about the end of February. I apologize now that I recall the conversation. I think it would be useful for everybody to hear that anyway.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I did get a chance to talk to the gentleman this afternoon, or actually this morning.
Okay.
And he described the company to me. It's basically a solar company that works on renewable energy to help control the costs of capital projects. And they are working with a number of cities throughout the state of California. I told him where we were on the wastewater treatment plant project. We're at the discussion stage right now. And so my recommendation, while that I think it is a viable alternative, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse. And I think we need to really look to see what our options are, what alternative the council would like to look at. And then finally, after that, then start taking a look at financing mechanisms. We don't want to get too far in advance, because otherwise you need to know what what direction you want to go before you decide what is the financing mechanism, because we're still trying to analyze what the finances are for each one of the alternatives. And that's one of the things that each one of the council members have expressed to us, is we don't have an exact idea as to the financing mechanisms and the financial analysis of that, of the alternatives. We need to come up with that first before we know how we're going to fund it.
I would disagree, because this plays into the actual question: do you want Plan A, B, or C? We don't want Plan A. It turned out that was something like the $7 million range. It was kind of like a Band-Aid approach. Plan B was a $10 million solution, which didn't include reclaimed water. And Plan C was, I think, in the neighborhood of $15 million and included, I recall, it doesn't matter, 12, 15 million. It included reclaimed water. So as a consequence, the funding mechanism, if we're going to go with the Plan C, you're going to have to do some kind of a bond deal. But nevertheless, whether it's Plan A, B, or C, this would provide cost savings to any one of those projects.
The other challenge that we would have is Johnson Control is one of probably a dozen providers that are out there in the state of California. And if you afford him the opportunity to make a presentation in front of the entire city council, you would be hard-pressed to deny other contractors that same opportunity. And so this would lend itself more to work on a staff level with the council member and talk to the various vendors that are out there. And then if we need to send out an RFP, we could send out an RFP from that perspective.
So Chris, maybe you could pursue having those conversations with Rick, and then he could work on...
So you're telling me the Economic Development Committee was a very valuable thing?
Okay. So is that okay?
That sounds
all right.
Viable to me.
And by the way, he did indicate that he was going to be sending me a packet of his information so we can review it within the next week or two.
Right. He was also going to, I guess we needed to provide him with some statements.
PG&E statements.
Right. And then he could use that to assess some basic cost savings. I'd be happy to do that.
Is there anyone else? Robert?
Yes, I would like to just suggest, Lisa, if we could get us an actual staff report on what it would take to, if we do, after discussion with our committee, to merge the Planning Commission and the VAR, or increase it to 7 people. To expand it, streamline it, and increase it. It may be a great idea. It may not. We just like to explore it.
So I think you're just asking for it to come back on the agenda with a full staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have the nods for that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should look at that.
Evaluate.
I'm sorry, what is your timing on that? Would it be for the February the 11th meeting?
No, it'd probably be the one after that. I'm sorry.
The 25th?
Okay.
February 25th?
We have to get a meeting between now and then.
With Aaron and, okay.
And you know what, can I let you know if we can get this meeting set up this week or early next? There's a possibility, or that's pushing too hard?
It would be time sensitive to put it on for the 11th, but
Great.
we can very easily put it on for the 25th.
Do that.
That shouldn't be a problem whatsoever.
Okay.
Put it on the 25th.
Let's do that.
25th.
Yeah. Perfect. I believe with that, we are adjourned.
The picture that you took, Rick, we're off, right?